take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscalla, every Saturday night on the LNM Network from 9 p.m. to midnight. And now your host, Riscalla.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill.
Hello and welcome everyone. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. I am your host, Riscalla. You can find us here every Saturday night, 9 p.m. to midnight Eastern. And we have got another lineup tonight of what we've been discussing in the last 5 or 6 shows now regarding the overthrowing of a nation. Something that happened a long time ago. And we'll get to that in a little while. I want to talk a little bit about what's going on currently in this wonderful land that we call America. I guess the easiest way to put this was, it really doesn't matter how you feel about the President of the United States when it comes to this particular subject. Doesn't matter whether you like him, it doesn't matter whether you hate him, it doesn't matter if you have no feelings at all for him. It should concern you what is going on today. Somebody who has experienced being blamed for something that they didn't do. I've had to experience that in my life. Fortunately, I wasn't trying to run for the President of the United States. And I didn't have an entire media after me making up lies. But I have a degree of what have a feeling of the degree of what it feels like to be blamed for something that you didn't do. And then to be treated in a manner where you can't even defend yourself. That's unacceptable. Like I said, it doesn't matter whether you like him or not. This should concern you, because if they're willing to do this to the President of the United States, what does that say about what they're going to do to you and me? Should we disagree with something that they don't, that they support? This is disturbing at the very least. I truly believe that, in my opinion, and I'm not a law scholar, but it certainly seems illegal what they're doing to me. Secret hearings. Witnesses testifying in secrecy, only bits and pieces of the testimony is released. People from the other side of the aisle are not admitted into the room, to the point where the Republicans have reached a level of frustration that kind of sort of reflects how I feel. I mean, long before they, quote, stormed into the room, and I watched the video, it didn't look like much of a storming to me. It looked like more of a, here we come, whether you like it or not. Long before they ever did that, I kept saying, I kept hearing the reports about we're not allowed in the room, we're not allowed into the hearing. Well, who's to stop you? Walk in there, sit down, and have them carry you out if they have to. But what is happening today is absolutely unacceptable. And it should concern you. And again, it doesn't matter whether you care for this president or you don't care for this president. The fact that there are rules and regulations in place when someone has been accused of something to defend themselves and they're not permitted to do that, that should bother you. And that is exactly what is happening today. We have a series of people who have gone overboard with the responsibilities that they have, or they have been, what's the best way to put it? They have been assigned to, and just completely gone way over the envelope. Now, I was doing a little bit of reading. I'm not a law scholar. I'm not, what bothers me about all this, I have friends of mine who could tell me anything I wanted to know, particular, depending upon which friend it is, but anything I want to know about a particular sport, because I don't really follow sports. They could tell me the stats for the teams, the stats for the individual players, whatever it might be, they know it. But they don't know spit about our government. And I got to tell you, I'm not far behind them. It's shameful to say, but I am not far behind them. I know what I know, but it's nowhere near the knowledge in comparison to what they know about the sport that they're so interested in. We should know about our government the way that some of these people know about sports. We should each know what is going on. The reason, one of the main reasons, what is happening today is because it's happening in secrecy. It's happening because people have become lackadaisical and do not want to get involved because, Riscalla, we just don't do politics and religion. And I got to tell you, that is by systematic programming to get you into the process of thinking that you shouldn't talk about these things when they are the very things that are affecting our personal lives. You should know about your government. You should know everything about your government. These are the people you have bestowed your honor, your, my goodness, I can't even think of the word. They're the people who have been offered the responsibility of representing us. And what has happened? You'd have to be asleep under a rock, for God's sake, to see that they don't represent us. It's bad enough with the information that I have run across over the last couple of months to know that we're not even living under the kind of government we're supposed to be living under. This wasn't intended by the Founding Fathers. One of the main subjects that we speak of today, the Second Amendment. What was the purpose of the Second Amendment, and why are these people on the left so hinged on destroying our right to defend ourselves? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, what that tells me, in my simple mind, is that anything, any kind of gun control, any kind of legislation that is introduced that would make it more difficult for us to purchase any kind of weapon breaks their oath to defend the Constitution, because it says the right of the people to keep. You're not allowed to take my guns from me. Red flag laws. I've already read an article where one man, I think it was in Connecticut, they killed the man. He didn't break any law. He didn't harm anybody. Somebody said that he was a danger. Oh my God, send the sheriff out. Take his guns away from him. Now you as a law-abiding citizen, put yourself in his position for a moment. Here you are sitting at home, minding your own business. The cops show up and want your guns. You haven't done anything wrong. You haven't broken any laws. You haven't been accused of anything. You're not being arrested. There's no search warrant. They're there to collect your guns. What would you do? Any law-abiding patriot would say, go pound sand. I haven't broken any laws. Go get your warrant and do it legally and come back. Don't sit here and tell me that you're going to take my weapons from me, my ability to defend myself from people just like you. What difference does it make whether you're wearing a badge or not? You're here to terrorize me. I'm in my home. I have broken no law whatsoever, and you come and tell me that you are going to take from me my ability to defend myself, and if I do resist in any way, shape, or form, you're going to take my life. Is that not a declaration of war upon me? The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, thanks to my friend David, I passed up a couple of things when I've read this many times. And that couple of things was a regulated, and I'm leaving the word out well, but a regulated militia. The militia would be made up of people like you and me. We would be regulated. That means that we would be financially supported, if necessary, by the state, and that we would carry arms sufficient to defend our state, whatever that might be. And that our loyalty would be to the state first, the country second. Now, many people have argued with me that they have constitutional rights. They get a little upset with me when I tell them you don't have any constitutional rights. This is many times any of these videos that you watch where these people start spewing out, I know my rights, I know my constitutional rights to the cops, and they laugh at them. Because you don't have any constitutional rights. You have none, zero, zilch, nada, goose eggs, however you want to say it. You don't have any constitutional rights. Your rights didn't come from a piece of paper that had writing put on it. Your rights came from our Creator. Only the Creator would have the authority to take those rights from you. Now, the reality of what we live in, the government, who does not have the authority, however has the power, will take those rights from you. Your God-given rights. So what did the fathers mean by putting these different rights of ours down on paper? What they were doing, from my understanding of it, is documenting our inalienable rights. Another key word, inalienable. Unseparatable, if there is such a word. Rights. They were documenting our inalienable rights that the government is to defend. When they enter into these different offices, they take an oath. And a portion of that oath is to defend the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. They're defending the Constitution, which is the document that lays out our inalienable rights. They are, in effect, defending our rights. But that's not what's happening today. The complete 180-degree opposite is what you are seeing today. They are literally attacking our rights. When you have someone who is running for the highest seat in this country and boldly expressing how they are coming for your guns in my opinion, is a declaration of all-out war. And my fear, as this insanity continues, is that we are nearing more and more a violent end to all of this. And it's not going to look good for a lot of people. How long can you continue to push someone before they push back and then you cry victim? For almost 3 years, from the point this man was elected as the president, they have been scheming ways to run him out of office. Now, again, this isn't about liking the president, disliking the president. It's about right and wrong. What is happening is wrong. It's bad enough when you realize that, first of all, the kind of government that we're living under isn't the kind of government that was intended by the forefathers. And then you see this insanity on top of all of that. It's disturbing, at the very least, for any of us who understand that what is going on affects each of us personally. And some of that you may think is an exaggeration. When you look at what has happened to this country, particularly in the last 2 decades, you look at literally at the declination, just deterioration of our society over the last 2 decades. Look at what's going on with these people who can't even figure out what gender they are. I would never have imagined in my wildest dreams that a mother who has a son would want to take her son at 7 years old and turn him into a girl. 7-year-olds have a hell of a lot more to worry about than what they were born with. They're trying to figure out who the hell they are. And you have a crazy mom who comes in and says, well, you're a girl, honey. You like the movie Frozen, so you must be a female in a male's body. We're going to make you a female. And the father steps in and says, no, you're not. And then they rule against the dad. Now, I don't have all the specifics of this story. But I have what I've told you, and I feel what I've told you is absolutely accurate. We have a mom who is a doctor of all things, a pediatrician. For God's sake, you took an oath, do no harm. You have a mom who's a pediatrician. From what I understand, the child was a donor egg, so I'm not sure if the father's sperm is what fertilized the egg or not, but you have a mom who has a son, who is a doctor, a pediatrician, who has a son, and a husband who they're going through a divorce or already have been divorced, of that I'm not clear, who has decided that this young man, at 7 years old, it's just heartbreaking. I can't imagine if my parents would have tried something like this on me. Of course I'm going to do what my parents want me to do. I love my parents. 7 years old. She has convinced this little boy that he's a girl. Or she's convinced herself, I don't know. Maybe both. And then she took him to court and was going to have him forcefully castrated, if necessary, and turn him into a girl. Now, again, look at how our society has deteriorated over the last, specifically just the last 2 decades. This is just a minuscule copy, an example of what is going on today. The last generation pushed gender confusion to the max. Having boys going to the girls' room. I never, in all of that, I don't recall any girls dying to go into the boys' room. Just couldn't wait. But it sure seemed to me that a lot of males wanted to end up in the female bathrooms. A lot of males feel as though they are females trapped into a male body. Now I have a little bit of compassion for them because I wonder how many of them really feel like that, truly feel like that, with all of the essence within them, because they've been literally toyed with by these pharmaceutical companies. I think there's a chemical called atrazine. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's a chemical that's out there everywhere. And what has it done? It has shown to take male frogs and literally turn them into females. So if there's gender confusion, genuine gender confusion out there, yeah, I wouldn't put it past that there are people who have had their DNA played with these freaking chemicals that these pharmaceutical companies have. Who knows what you're getting in a vaccine? I don't care what they write down. You think I trust these people? I would never get a vaccine. You'd have to hold me down. And brother, you try to hold me down, you better make doggone sure I can't defend myself. Because if I can, I will. To the last drop of my blood. You don't know what you're getting when you get a vaccine. It breaks my heart. I have a friend of mine who makes their own vaccine. They're biologists, and one of their specialties is birds. They make their own vaccine. This is one of the most pure-hearted people you would ever meet in your life. They just can't understand how a vaccine could be dangerous because they make their own, and they know how safe the ones that they make are for their animals. But they don't understand. I guess you just can't see the evil that we have in this world today. And that's the sad part of it, because there's many people like her who have that kind of heart, just pure at heart. They wouldn't harm somebody. They wouldn't knowingly harm. They would harm themselves before they would knowingly harm someone or even an animal. They would rather harm themselves. And the problem with that is their mind is so pure and their heart is so pure, they're easy to be deceived. And that is what's happened today to many people. They have been deceived. They believe in this thing called pharmaceuticals. They believe in doctors. Even the doctors, many of them have been deceived. Some of them know better, but many of them have been deceived. This example I gave you of what kind of mom, I want you to think about this for a moment. What kind of mom has a child and ends up being born with a penis, which our generation, mine growing up, would call him a boy. In some places that's offensive, but that's just that's the reality of this. So he has this identity already given to him by the Creator, and now you're not happy with that for whatever reason. I don't know that the child is truly not happy. At 7 years old, you're going to tell me that this child is ready to make a lifelong decision at 7 years old. They can't even figure out what they want for breakfast, for God's sake. You'll never convince me that a 7-year-old is absolutely astutely convinced to himself that he is what he is and he wants to be something else. Not at 7 years old. Now, if you're 18, 20, 21, God bless you. It's your decision. It's your life. You do what you want with it. But not at 7. A doctor. A pediatrician, someone who has taken enough to do no harm. Sadly, there's many people like that. They have been conditioned, and they believe in what they're doing. As twisted and, let me back up a moment. In my opinion, as twisted and sick as this is, they believe what they're doing is right. As much as I believe that they are doing wrong. Now, my gut tells me there are far more many people that believe as I believe than believe that she believes. And if I am correct, how in God's green earth did these people become the majority when it comes to the vocal point, when it comes to the sound bites, when it comes to something like this where you're going to take a 7-year-old and change their gender for your own benefit? It can't be for this child's benefit. You'll never convince me that this 7-year-old child knows what he's doing for the rest of his life, that you're going to change his gender. That's what he wants. Now, you may convince him of that. That I would not doubt. But not coming to it in his own and on his own. No. They got a lot of other things they've got to worry about. They're trying to figure out who the hell they are at 7 years old. You have somebody like this come along and do this? And this is just a microcosm of the problems that we have today. This is a tip of the iceberg of people who would knowingly do something that is unacceptable. I've got to calm down a little bit because I'm liable to say it's just unacceptable. And more of our rights are being taken from us because we're sitting back and we're being lackadaisical about our God-given rights to defend ourselves. Nobody has the authority. There's two things that we're talking about here. Authority and power. No government of ours has the authority to take your ability to defend yourself. It doesn't exist. Now, if you've broken a law, that's a different story. But if you're a law-abiding citizen and you've done nothing wrong, they do not have the authority to take your weapons from you. Or they don't have the authority to infringe upon you in any way, shape, or form what weapon you choose to have, whether that's a crossbow or a machine gun. A jet fighter. I had a discussion with one person. They said, well, I guess you would allow people to buy tanks. Yeah, if you could afford it, according to the Constitution, yeah, you can have a tank. You can have a jet fighter. You can have whatever the government has, because the whole reason behind that Second Amendment was to balance out that the government could never be more powerful than the people with regard to firepower. Never. Because they knew the moment that the government has more firepower than the people is when the power begins to corrupt them. And that's what we have today. There's a lot of people out there that refuse, absolutely refuse, to have their right to defend themselves taken from them. And they're absolutely correct in doing so.
There are facts we're not being told on TV, so I want to talk to you about gun control in America. Why did all of the big media focus their attention on the attacks in Orlando and completely ignore the fact that the following weekend 52 people were shot in Chicago, a city with some of the strictest gun control laws in the country? There seems to be an agenda for gun control while ignoring the gun violence in other cities and countries where the experiment of gun control is already underway and failing. I carry a gun because there are only two types of creatures on this planet, predators and prey. No one watches a cheetah chase down a gazelle and deny that the gazelle has the right to use its horns to protect itself. But there are people who would deny that same right of self-defense to other human beings. Such people seem to think that the way to stop the cheetah is to cut the horns off the gazelle. That somehow, if you make it easier for the predator will simply go away. It doesn't work that way. If you make it easier for the predator, you get more predators. I carry a gun because when predators know they're less likely to have an advantage, they're less likely to be a predator. The FBI found that when states allow concealed carry, murder rates are immediately reduced. And cities in America that pass a law requiring households to have a firearm see the number of home invasions drop dramatically. I carry a gun because the ratio a gun is used in a homicide is significantly less than when it's used in self-defense. Firearms are used up to 300 times more often to save innocent lives than to commit a murder, and guns prevent up to 2.5 million crimes in the U.S. every year, often without a single shot ever being fired. I carry a gun not because it's a weapon, but because it's a shield. 200,000 women every year use a gun to defend themselves against sexual abuse. I carry a gun because almost every mass shooting in the last 50 years took place in a gun-free zone. Law-abiding citizens are forced to give up their right to protect themselves, while every criminal breaks the law, including gun-free signs, when they decide to murder. I carry a gun because a gun-free zone makes it easier for predators to target their prey. Stricter gun laws make the problem worse, and making guns illegal wouldn't remove murder from our cities any more than making heroin illegal stop addicts from doing drugs. I carry a gun because the facts are nations with strict gun control laws have significantly higher murder rates than those that don't. I carry a gun because I know in the US, scissors and knives kill almost 5 times more people every year than rifles do, including the AR-15 and other so-called assault rifles. Calling to ban a tool will not resolve the problem. I carry a gun because criminals break the law with or without them. The 9/11 terrorists used box cutters in airplanes. Timothy McVeigh used bags of assault fertilizer. I understand that some people want to blame things like semi-automatic rifles, 30-round magazines, hate crimes, terror threats, gun control, historic flags, national security, religion, or illegal immigration. I understand we want to blame something, anything that we can control. But don't blame me because I carry a concealed gun to protect my family. I understand we need to start addressing what we really want to ban: violence, murder, and insanity. I carry a gun because I know who's pushing to ban them. Our right to bear arms is not there simply to protect us against lowly criminals. I know the politicians know this, which is why they call for gun control instead of crime control. I carry a gun because I've seen gamblers who want more winnings, alcoholics who want more alcohol, and people with power want more power. I understand what the Founding Fathers knew, that the right to bear arms is there to protect the American people from those drunk with power, and I understand every country was free before it wasn't. I carry a gun because having the right to bear arms gives the citizens of this great nation a fighting chance against the predators of greed and power, whether in our home, our capital, or our neighboring lands. Evil exists only because too many good people stand by and do nothing. I know seeing America's right to free speech was a chilling wake-up call when it became locked away in a zone. That's why so many steadfast Americans and great organizations stand up for the people to keep the balance of power from tipping over. I carry a gun because it removes the unfair advantage between predators and prey. I don't carry because I'm looking for a fight. I carry a gun because I'm looking to be left alone. People can only persuade you to do something by one of two ways: reason or force. Having a gun with me removes their option to make me do something by force. It helps keep predators civilized. That's why the right to bear arms is important. That's why I own a firearm, and that's why I'm proud to say I carry a gun.
I guess.
Better than Late Night in the Midlands.
There's nothing better than Late Night in the Midlands. I love to talk to people from the heartland. They're tremendous people. They really are.
Opinions, politics.
I'm going to give you 10 minutes tonight because you're tremendous people.
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris, she's a horror show.
Elizabeth Warren. Or Pocahontas.
But I mean, Elizabeth Warren, I love my Pocahontas. She is the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, and good old Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, oh my God, what a communist. He's not even a socialist. He is such a communist.
Then there's Sloppy Joe. Sleepy Joe.
Sleepy Joe Biden. Every time he sniffs a little girl's head.
You heard the man. Nothing better. Late Night in the Midlands. We cover everything.
And as we have been programmed mentally, intellectually, one must be aware of this being programmed like a computer.
Programming that we are constantly assaulted by throughout our life conditions us, it programs us to a particular worldview.
The project is literally the secularization of the world. New secular or worldly order.
A new study says the news media have been pushing a gospel of godlessness on the American public.
Because this media is here and designed to make sure that they ask no critical questions, to make sure that the only thing that they are concerned about is having a good time, And so that is why today, one of the struggles that that you have as young people, that when you want to do different events and you want to talk about real issues, you have the struggle of many of your peers who've been so conditioned in this matrix that they would rather party than listen to the truth. They would rather party and shop and go to the mall than to stand up for issues of justice. They're stuck in the matrix. They're stuck in the matrix. But you have the responsibility of helping to wake them up, of helping to wake them up, of helping to wake them up.
Now, how do we know that there's a God?
After having been thoroughly brainwashed.
And how do we know that there's a creator? How do we know that there's a creator?
You're listening to WCET FM, America's talk station.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Goes, 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 goes.
Now, from sunny South Florida, it's the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscalla. Every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to midnight on the L&M Network. And now, your host, Riscalla.
All right, welcome. We are back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. I am your host, Riscalla. You can find us every Saturday night here on the L&M Network. L&M Network is located at www.lnmnetwork.com. Excuse me, that was incorrect. Let's try that again. www.latenightinthemidlands.com. That was an old website. www.latenightinthemidlands.com. That's what I get for trying to read and talk at the same time. Anyway, big thank you to all of you subscribers out there. We couldn't do this without you guys. And, we try our best to, sometimes it's entertainment, sometimes it's education, sometimes it's just kind of crazy stuff. And the last 6 shows have been really education, an opening of something that I was completely unaware of, and I'm sure the majority of the people out there are completely unaware of. I knew that things were wrong. I mean, if you heard the monologue, you heard me basically rant that things are wrong. Things are not right, you guys. Things are not right. And part of the reason that things are not right is that the kind of government that we're living under is not the kind of government that was originally intended by the Founding Fathers. And as a result of that, the deception that was done, and some of it wasn't even done in secrecy or using a deceptive manner. Some of it was done out in the open, where people were just literally replaced. The governor was literally replaced by force. Well, he had his choice. You can leave, or we're going to carry you out. Or we'll have somebody carry you out. That's not America. That's not the way things were intended to be. We don't have a government that is of the people and by the people. We haven't for a very long time. And the result of that's what you're seeing today. Somewhere along the line there, after this deception took place, this literally an overthrowing of our nation took place, somewhere along the line people started to realize what was going on, and they wanted to restore. They want to make right what was wrong. Is that asking too much? And that's basically what we're going to be talking about. An injustice that has occurred, and a restoration of that injustice, if you will, in order to be able to make things right. Otherwise, I don't think we'll ever have complete satisfaction and joy in this country, because we'll continue to be living under people who have, a small group of people who have in their mentality the right to treat us in whatever way they want. That's not the way this place was supposed to be run. I have to laugh about that, although it's very serious. I laugh about it because, honestly, it's something that would bring tears to my eyes if I didn't. Can you imagine how many people have given their lives, shed their blood, lost limbs, forever, ever harmed in some way, shape, or form? How many millions of people, only to find out now that we were lied to, we have been overthrown, that the government that we have isn't the government that was intended by us, yet many people still hang on to the system. Well, it's more, I got to be honest with you, it's more comfortable to hang on to the existing system. And now what's happened in the last 5 shows is we have discussed a way to begin a restoration process. And it doesn't take a whole lot of us to be able to do this. So tonight I've asked David Callihan. David is really the one who kind of started all of this with me. And I've asked Milo Townsend to come back and have a kind of another discussion about what I have kind of briefly discussed here, to try to give us a little more light about what's going on. There is the original system that was intended by the Founding Fathers is not the system that we're living under today. And if we want to get back to what is supposed to be a free country, we've got to be able to recognize that there is a great deal of deception going on, and because of that deception, people have enslaved us. And through that enslavement, they have benefited and we have lost. And all I'm asking for is restoration. So let me welcome back David first. David Callihan, welcome to the Red Pill Reality Show. Thank you, sir, for coming in.
Riscalla, hi. It's good to be here again tonight. We're starting to make a little bit of a habit out of this, aren't we?
Hey, this is really, really, really important. It's not something that you can't unknow once you know. And let me take a moment to welcome Milo. Milo, thank you for taking the time, my friend. I know you're not going to be with us all night, and I appreciate whatever time that you can give us. It's truly, it goes with appreciation. Thank you, Milo.
Not a problem. How are you tonight?
I'm hanging in there, my friend. I'm hanging in there. I'm watching the insanity that's going on with the existing system, and I keep telling myself that there has to be a better way, and I think that the better way was in place for a very brief period of time, and then through a deceptive process was literally taken away from us. And I, from what I understand, I think you're in North Carolina, right?
Yes, sir.
So is North Carolina considered now to have been reestablished? Am I right?
Well, we'll just dive right into it. There's 2 North Carolinas. One was originally established in 1776. That was when it created its first state constitution. And that was the original, what we call the de jure state. And the second came into existence in 1868 by virtue of the Reconstruction Act. And it has an entirely different constitution. It is the product of what you referred to as the overthrow. The de facto state, that second one, is still in existence. In fact, I'd wager 99.99% of North Carolinians recognize that state instead of the original one. They probably aren't even aware that there's a distinction, or that there are 2 instead of just one.
I didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, so the original one has been reestablished, at this point in time, we're kind of existing, I won't really say underground, but sort of side by side with the second de facto state.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all a question of what people choose to, which state people choose to put their loyalty and their allegiance with.
And what they recognize, right? Which one are you going to recognize? Because I didn't know there was two. And there's also, who else was it? Texas? Was it Texas that are they working on this?
Yep, in Texas, and also Virginia is working on it. They've not reestablished yet, but they are in the process.
And I'm going to look into how we can do this in Florida.
That's exciting.
I want to see how we can reestablish Florida, and really what we're asking for. And I asked, I think it was you, a specific question on one of the shows, and that was, and I had a reason for asking. That was, are we trying to overthrow the government? I want to make it clear we're not trying to overthrow anything. We're just trying to make something that was done wrong right. Just like what you're seeing today with what's going on with the President of the United States, this current system that's in place, the de facto system as we refer to it. I know without a doubt in my mind, 99.9% of the stuff that they say he's done wrong, he hasn't done anything wrong. And all he wants to do is try to make things right. Well, all we want to do is try to make things right. We have the documents. I say we. The people who have introduced me to this information have documents, government documents. It's not something that a third person, a third party, these are government documents that came from government sites that show what we're talking about is absolutely accurate. And what has happened as a result of that is slowly but surely we have become a skewed government. It has become corrupted and skewed to their best benefits. I mean, imagine, I wasn't there when they wrote all this stuff up, but I can somewhat envision what they had in mind when they were writing about all the different things, the responsibilities of the different people that were involved in our government, a representative, a senator, a congressman, all those different things. The one thing that I know that they had in mind was that these people were supposed to serve us. Regardless of what title they carried, they were supposed to serve us. And I cannot honestly tell you that I know of any one of them up there that is out to serve the American people. They may be out to serve America, few and far between, but they're not out to serve us. And we've lost that along the way somewhere. And until we can restore that, this is what we're going to deal with, this insanity that we call a government. And so let me bring David back on. David, I read earlier in the monologue the Second Amendment and the thing about the militia. And the one thing that you pointed out to me that I kind of read over many times, and that was a well-regulated militia. So I wanted to kind of bring you in at that point and kind of describe a little bit, because I think the majority of the people don't realize a well-regulated militia. What is that?
Well-regulated militia. Good question. And I guess I would back up and start by saying that what most people think it is not what it is. Because most people take the idea that well-regulated militia means that it's very well ordered. That's one that you hear all the time. That somehow you get a bunch of people in some kind of a military formation, and then they have some kind of discipline to do something, and it's this very esoteric idea. You know what I mean? And I'm sure, Riscalla, you even
that's
I
how
used
I
to
thought.
think that way.
Yeah, that's how I see it. Yeah.
But that's okay. The Constitution is one statute, if you understand it legally, and people don't realize that. And by that meaning that it's really every place that a certain word is used within the Constitution, it has the same meaning for that word throughout it. And so one of the things that we can do to answer the question, instead of me just giving you an answer, is let's just talk about some of the terms in the Constitution. There's 3 times that the word regulate, or the root word regulate, is used in the Constitution. One is in the Commerce Clause, where it says that Congress shall have the power to regulate commerce among the states. A second place that it's used is when it says Congress shall have the power in Article 1, Section 10, I believe it is, to regulate money and the value thereof. And then the third place that it's used is in the Second Amendment, where it states that a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, exists. That's the only three places the word regulate's used in the Constitution. Well, I would be pretty prone to suggest that if I was to go out and find 20 people on the street, take a microphone out, and go around and find people on the street and find 20 people that actually, think that they know something about the Constitution and say, what does it mean when it's talking about Congress regulating commerce or regulating money? And they probably will say something about, well, Congress has the ability to make laws that tell us how we're going to do business, and merchants are going to operate, and taxes are going to be levied against, things that are being done in buying and selling, and Congress is going to have the ability to do that. And then if we talk about, well, what's it mean when it says Congress has the power to regulate money? Well, they have the ability to borrow, they have the ability to tax, they have the ability to spend, and those powers are put in place when Congress gets together and legislates, comes into sessions in the House of Representatives and the Senate, and deliberates and proposes bills. And we all in school learned how bills are made back when we were in civics classes in school and social studies, whatever the subject was that we learned about that, in probably junior high. We learned that the House of Representatives will propose a bill, and they are the ones that actually put the budgets to the bills, and then the Senate also deliberates bills and proposes them, and they go through the two houses. And then when a majority of both houses has, agreed to a bill, then they go into a committee and they work out the details between them, and then they send it to the president, and the president either writes a veto that it's not going to be accepted, or he signs it, and if he signs it, then it becomes a law. If he sits on it for a certain period of time, it becomes law. If he vetoes it, then the Senate and the House can vote, and if they have a super majority, I think it's 2/3 majority, then it becomes a law anyway. And that's the way that our money and our commerce is regulated. But then we go to well-regulated militia, and we think something entirely different. And I suggest it's no different. The only difference is that the militia is not a federal institution, except under three specific conditions, which I can talk about in a minute. But in all other cases, it is a state institution. Now, for a moment, let's put aside the fact of what we've been talking about over the last 6 shows. This is now the 7th, where we've gotten into what John Ainsworth and Milo and our other friends have been discussing about, whether the state is operating properly as a constitutional entity according to the ways that it ought to operate. Let's for the moment assume, just for the sake of this conversation, that the state is behaving itself well enough that the militia could exist, okay? When it exists, what we're talking about being well regulated is the same kind of an idea as when you talk about regulating fishing or regulating hunting or regulating the tax code or the laws having to do with property and banking or any other set of regulations in the state that governs the way we operate in a political fashion. That's what regulated means as far as I see. And there's a way to prove that pretty easily. And I would submit to anybody listening tonight that you take a ride to your state house, probably to your state Supreme Court library, and in there you're going to find a whole set of statutes at large for your state. And I would submit that if you go back even to the latest states that have been admitted, excluding Hawaii, probably, you're going to find that there were territorial militia statutes before they became states, and provincial militia statutes before they became states if they were some of the original colonies. And then when they became states, then their laws were converted into state statutes and continued those militia laws. And so that is really what well-regulated means. And it defines a whole lot of things. It defines the military structure by which that state organized itself. Militia is a military term. You know, I like to point out that when President Trump was inaugurated, he actually made a statement, and I'm not quoting it verbatim, but I've got the general gist of it in my mind. He made a statement during his inaugural address that was pretty interesting. He said that we are going to call together the military to protect the people and law enforcement to protect the people. I believe when he said that, he, in technicality, actually called forth the militia, because there are 3 military in the Constitution. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 12 talks about the Army. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 13 talks about the Navy. And Article 1, Section 8, Clauses 15 and 16, along with Article 2, Section 2, and the Second and the Fifth Amendment talks about the militia. There are 3 military in the U.S. Constitution. And if you go to every one of the state constitutions, the state militia is also articulated in their constitutions. In fact, we, at the present time, because of some of the legalities of what's been changed over the years, we'll talk in the future about the Dick Law of 1903. And in that law, they actually changed the militia laws of the state, and of the country and of the states. But they created the organized and the unorganized militia between the years 1903 and 1933, and reestablished the militia laws to conform to the National Guard. Okay, so this is not hidden under a rock. Anybody that wants to go and look this stuff up, you can go to your state archives and learn all about it. Many of them are actually online now. They're putting a lot of it into PDF files, and sometimes on basic websites at the state level. But that's what regulated is. I know I've kind of shared a lot of stuff there, but and we'll talk here in a little bit about the relevance of all of this, because to me, relevance is one of the most important issues that we have got to wrap our minds around with respect to this stuff. Just talking about this stuff really is not just some pontification, or like I remember we used to say, professors like to sit around contemplating their navel while they're figuring out all these things in universities. If this doesn't have some practical end game to it, I don't want to play in the sandbox. If we can't figure out how to actually fix some of the problems going on today, this is a waste of time to me. And I hope it is to anybody that's listening tonight. If this doesn't result in us moving the chains forward to pursue freedom, to regain our civil society, to give us a sense of, law and order and happiness, pursuing happiness and life and liberty, I don't want to play around with this stuff. So, anyway, that's to answer your question. Well-regulated means that the militia is organized. It is developed with very specific rules about what did happen, how it happened, how it's supposed to happen, what will happen, with respect to a military function in which, as it says in the Virginia Declaration of Rights, it involves all the people trained to arms, which is the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state.
Just people, not. We're not talking soldiers. We're talking people, everyday people, that are trained in order to do this.
And they become citizen soldiers when they do that. Let's not forget that this is a military function, and but yes, it's the normal, common people.
And that's where the balance is.
Politic.
That's where the balance is, and we lost that when there was this reestablishment of the states, which is what I spoke with Milo about just a few minutes ago. Reestablishing the state would help to bring in the correct militia that it was intended to defend us in the state. I'm looking for this article, and I can't find it for the life of me. I ran across an article, and I thought I saved it. There was an article where the state militia wants to arrest the Attorney General because of his stance on continuously pushing for more and more gun legislation. And I think that in my mind, when we discussed all this, that would be one of the things, if we had a real militia, that would be one of the things they would be there for. No, you can't do that. And we will hold you responsible that you can't do that kind of thing.
I think it's interesting that you just used you just said something pretty, I think, very significant. You said, if we have a real militia. Okay?
Yep.
This is how they got us. This is the ruse. I call it a surreptitious subversion. Because what was done underhandedly and by stealth, where the people were they were being told one thing and another thing was happening. And it was being done surreptitiously because if they had done this openly, there would have been such a revolt back in 1903 that even in spite of the fact that things were altered significantly before then. For instance, New York State was one of the last states to actually conform to the Dick Law in 1908. The Congress gave the states 5 years to change their laws, to alter their militia laws in their state to make them conform to the new way that everything was going to be set up. Okay? And New York was one of the last states to comply. They complied on, I think it was like the 14th of January, and they had to complete the law by the 21st of January of 1908. And the reason was, and I happen to be a New Yorker, okay, and most of my life as a child, and even for another 8 or 9 years when I had my family was at home, my children were all at home, I lived in upstate New York. And the militia of New York they were the example in this whole country back in the day. I have a picture that I've shared on Facebook, and I actually went to the archives of my hometown, to Chemung County Historical Society, and found 2 pictures from 1894 of the militia marching down the street of my town. And you're talking about a very highly military, what's the word I'm thinking of? The formation was very regular. The lines were perfect. You had like 20 guys across in a line marching down the street with a rifle on their shoulder, and the lines were perfect. 400, 500 men could be seen in this picture.
Wow.
Marching down the street of Elmira, New York, on a Friday afternoon in the middle of July. I think it was July 25th, 1894. I think is the date on the pictures. And they were all in military uniforms with beautiful white hats and beautiful uniforms.
So go ahead.
You look at this and you go, what the heck?
Well, am I correct if we had the militia that was intended to be, when we had an example like this where we had, I don't know what state this was in, I'm pretty sure it was the Attorney General kept pushing for more and more gun laws, would they have the authority to step in and go, you can't do that? If everything was the way it's supposed to be?
Yeah, I mean, here's the point. The answer is yes.
Okay.
Because we go back to what is the purpose of the militia. And we get an answer to that in an indirect way by what Congress deemed the purpose of the militia, not just Congress, but the Continental Congress deemed the purpose of the militia in the Constitution. Okay? See, what happened in the Constitution is that the militia was established as a federal entity. In other words, it was now a constitutional entity recognized as a part of the United States. Not just up until then being a part of each of the provinces or each of the colonies. They moved into a different level, that it wasn't just recognized that the state of New York and the state of New Hampshire and the state of Massachusetts and Delaware and the Carolinas and Georgia and Maryland and Maine wasn't in there yet, but in other words, the 13 colonies, that their militia was not just the militia of the colonies, but we now had a recognition of it as being a constitutional entity. And by the way, let me define constitutional, because we have a little bit of a misnomer there too. We think constitutional means it's written in the Constitution. But that's not correct. Not in the ultimate sense of what constitutional means. And that's why we get a lot of people confused when they say, well, we don't have constitutional rights, we have unalienable rights. Okay, we might have civil rights, but we don't have constitutional rights. Our rights aren't given to us by being written in the Constitution. That's absolutely correct. But that doesn't mean that there are not constitutional rights. Constitutional rights are the rights that are constituted governmentally, like the right to free speech so that you can be protected when you criticize your government, and the right to a free press so you can write about things that you disagree with what the government is doing or what they've done wrong. Those are constitutional rights. Those are rights that we are empowered with. We have the power to maintain because of the way our government is constituted, where we are not in a totalitarian state. We're not even under a monarchy where there's one guy or one lady that has more authority than anybody else.
Don't tell Hillary.
And here's why it's important to understand that. Do you know what one of the major things was that the founding generation was fighting to protect? And this is in document after document after document. They were protecting their constitutional rights. Unalienable and constitutional rights. Well, what Constitution were they talking about? Because our Constitution wasn't even written until 1787 to 1791. So it couldn't have been that one, because we're talking 1775, 1774. What Constitution are they talking about? The answer is the British Constitution, because they were all British subjects, and they even were willing to fight to preserve their constitutional rights, which would have been that they were protecting the rights that are articulated in the Magna Carta and the Declaration of Rights of Man and these other documents, and also the rulings of the magistrates that had been written down or were in some other document. Blackstone's commentaries had a lot of these constitutional rights articulated. They were talking about many of these basic things that we see in the Bill of Rights, but they're articulated in the Bill of Rights of every one of the colonial and then state constitutions, and probably the first article of each of them. Okay, these were the rights that are as a result of natural law, as John Locke called it, or Algernon Sidney, who was the other guy that Thomas Jefferson always wrote about, his writings. And the point is that these rights are the rights that we have. They are inalienable. They are rights that we have that cannot be taken from us by any government or by anyone. The only way they can be taken is if we violate a basic principle that compels them to be taken from us because we have violated someone else's rights, like by murdering somebody or by rape or by some other action where we get arrested, we get to be incarcerated against our will. Okay, so it's important to understand that that is what we need to get our minds wrapped around. We need to start understanding what we're really fighting for. And I'll just say this one last thing. I happen to be doing something kind of fun this weekend. I'm playing with my 5-year-old grandson. I have quite a few grandkids, but I'm with one of them this weekend because his parents had to go to Ohio, and so I get to play with him all day. And I'm very concerned about my 5-year-old grandson and what the future looks for him right now, because we're looking at society a lot differently than when we were 5 years old, Riscalla.
Amen.
And the things that are going on right now with respect to what adults are putting into the minds of kids about their sexuality, we never had to think about any of that stuff when we were kids.
It's sad.
And
it really is sad.
How can these kids be thinking this way except that they've been influenced in our culture to think about things that they should never have to be thinking about at that age?
Really? I was talking about the mom who is a pediatrician of all things. She's a doctor, a pediatrician, who wants to transgender her boy into a girl, and the father's fighting it. And the father, I think now, had finally got a stay, but up until just recently was losing. That all he wanted to do was let his boy be a boy. When he gets old enough to make the decision, then he can make the decision, but not at 7 years old. It's unbelievable. And this is more and more.
He's still a concrete thinker. I'm an educator, by the way. That child hasn't even got the ability to think abstractly yet.
And
so whatever he's thinking is strictly because it's being put in his head.
It's conditioned, conditioned to be that way. It's sad.
And unfortunately, the brain of that child is still growing, and those neurons and the synapses of that brain are accepting ideas. They're going to influence him the rest of his life. It's
unthinkable.
But see, this goes to an even deeper problem, because what we're really talking about in all this tonight, the tentacles of the octopus or the branches of the tree are so far-reaching, and we've got to get down to the root and the trunk of this stuff and understand that we're in a cultural war in all of this. And the funny part is what we're talking about politically here is where they always get you. This is where they wrap you up, okay? And this was not unintentionally. And think about how difficult it is that we're having these conversations over the last 7 weeks, talking about things that are not commonly talked about.
Think about a 7-year-old.
Look how important this stuff is.
Think about a 7-year-old having to make a decision or being asked to make a decision. Do you really want your penis? If you don't want your penis, we can fix it for you. We can give you a vagina. At 7 years old. I'm so fed up with this movement, this liberal, I don't know what they call it, but it's just completely out of hand. And I can't help but believe that part of this enabling of them is because we're living under a deceptive system. We were not living under the kind of system that was intended for us to be living under. I think that would have been more checks and balances, and as a result of that, much of this would have been put out long before it ever even reached the mainstream.
Well, let's bring this back full circle to the interesting ramifications of this, because we have had these conversations with John and Milo, and we're really trying to wrap our minds around this whole thing of state sovereignty and the de facto versus the de jure government, and whether we're citizens of the state or not. I'm continuing to read and study this stuff. I'm seeing stuff in my own Constitution that I go, holy cow, I never saw that before. But when you sit and you look at all this and you try to, just put it in the right context, what we're dealing with here is the fact that it ought to be that we are operating under a principle that we're governed locally, that the people in our community should be determining what the laws are that we follow, and how we behave ourselves in our community should be something being dealt with at the local level, as close to where you have to deal with people as possible. And when we're now learning that in most cases that the decisions are made by about 500 and some odd people convening in a city in the northeastern United States, And we're thousands of miles away, and we're being not just influenced, but forced into certain mindsets by a very, very, very small number of people. They call that an oligarchy. Okay? It's actually even more than that. It's a kleptocracy, meaning that they've figured out how to confiscate our wealth, and they're getting most of it, and we're getting very little of it. We're just trying to figure out how to survive. And they've got all of the rules in their favor, and
that's true.
They have all the control, and we sit back and go, how are we going to even survive next week?
That's basically it.
Well, let's not end on this little piece of the conversation on a bad note. I'm really hopeful. I'm cautiously hopeful that people are starting to see enough things happening at this time where they're going to start going, we better start figuring out what in the heck's going on. And if we're there at that moment and can give them something, we might be able to get enough good people to correct this thing. That's my hope.
There is a better way, and that way has been set forth many, many years ago. All we have to do is go back to that better way. Milo.
Remember the good past, yep.
Milo has been very active in returning and restoring that better way. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't take a whole lot of people to get the movement going. Is that right, Milo? He may not be with us anymore. You there, Milo? Maybe you're on mute.
Oh,
there
sorry, I had myself on mute.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was less than 20 here in North Carolina when they started in 1997.
So it doesn't take a lot of people to get it going. And then the advantage of that, eventually when you are recognized as who you are, you will be living under the circumstances and the situations that were set forth. We will really be free, because we're not free. I don't care what you tell me. We don't live in a free country today. You don't have freedom with the intention and the forefathers had in mind today. It doesn't exist. We live more closer to a police state in some states, depending upon where you are, than we do anything that resembles freedom. In other states, generally speaking, the whole United States is more of a capitalistic fascist state. It's being run by corporations, right and left. That's not the way it was intended to be for us. And we have a way to restore that. And the way to restore that, to start it all, is the reestablishment of the states. And that's one of the things that Milo was involved with. So I know I'm not going to keep you much longer, Milo, but if you can give me like a Reader's Digest version, why the reestablishment, what did the reestablishment do?
Well, first of all, it's a work in progress. It's not done. North Carolina, the original state of North Carolina, is reestablished, and we do hold elections and operate insofar as, a couple of dozen people that meet regularly and are actively involved on a regular basis. But, the process that's ongoing is one of doing exactly what we've been doing over these last 6-7 shows. It's just making other people aware and trying to generate interest and bring people into the reestablished state who more than likely didn't even know about it before, but if they did, then they may have been, a little ambivalent about whether or not it was something they wanted to be involved in. But what I tell people when they ask me, well, what are the benefits, is how someone usually frames it. What are the benefits of being a state citizen, of being a citizen of a reestablished state? And I mean, I got to be honest, the benefits are out there in the future somewhere. The benefits are really going to be felt and enjoyed when the majority, or at least enough people, latch onto this and claim it and make it a part of their life. And until that time, those few of us who are involved in it, it's sort of a struggle. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is a fight, and it's an effort going against the grain, against the flow of things, because everybody just kind of wants to go along and get along. That's the natural human inclination. But if you have a little bit of foresight and you can look far enough down the road to see that all of the things that people get actively involved in politically these days, that they say, well, I've got, objections to this and problems with that, and I don't understand why they're doing this. I mean, you've named off several already just on the show tonight. Everything from the, alleged gender dysphoria of a 7-year-old boy to the confiscation of individual citizens' firearms. I mean, you've got, the list is so long, I can't even begin to do it justice by rattling it off. It's everything from raw milk to collection of rainwater and
God.
I mean,
where do you start?
Where
really?
does it end?
Yeah.
So all of these problems that people say, well, we object to this, we have an issue with that. Well, those are the branches, and if you can see that all of those branches are attached to what David referred to as the root, the trunk of it is really this situation that we're in legally and politically. And ironically, it's a situation that we put ourselves in the eyes of the law. We are volunteering for that legal status and that legal subjugation. And so if you can look far enough down the road to see how reestablishing the lawful original state and claiming your state citizenship therein would be a path to restoring the original Constitution to its rightful place as the law of the land. Once you see that, then the benefits become self-evident. You quickly can see how doing that, taking that path, whatever struggles it might entail, ultimately would wind up yielding a situation socially, legally, politically for all of us that would do away with the vast majority of all of the things that we object to on a daily basis. It would solve most of those problems just by default. So those are the benefits that I look forward to, hopefully one day, being able to enjoy. But in the meantime, right now, it's not a gravy train. It's not like we're living on easy street just because we claim state citizenship and then all of our problems vanish. In fact, oftentimes we incur more difficulties.
Yeah, that's right. It becomes more difficult because you're, like you said, you're going against the grain. You're fighting the flow of the tide, and it is easier.
But the more people you get into this, of course, the less that would be true. Ultimately, if you could get 15 or 20 or 30% of the population of a state involved in this, then you're talking significant numbers.
Yeah.
And once you've got numbers, there's, as they say, there's safety in numbers. And, you kind of begin to have clout at that point.
Exactly.
Some sort of, you can assert yourself a little more then.
That's exactly right. That's what we see happening with some of these movements. There aren't a lot of people who are LGBTQRST, WXY, whatever they call themselves. I got to tell you, I think the overall population is less than 1%. It's probably even less than that. So how is it that 1% can be this loud vocal voice that we hear all the time about all this stuff? It's because they've gotten involved. They've become active. So if we can get enough of us active and involved, we too can make this change. This is not pie in the sky. This is not a theory. This is something that people have already done. Milo is somebody who has done it in his life. Like he said, it's not easy because you're fighting the system. You're going to be looking at a system that has deceived us into slavery and you're trying to change that. Well, they are happy, fat, dumb, and happy the way they are. Why do you want to rock the boat, so to speak? Well, we want to rock the boat because that's what's right. It's right. It's what is necessary in order to make this correct again. We have to. This literally is a fight. We have to fight this. A whole bunch of things. I believe part of it is conditioning or programming, however you want to call it. A part of it is the financial strain that they put on you with this system because, unfortunately, even though we don't want to be a part of it, we're a part of it. It's not. We don't have our own money. Even if we did have our own money, could we go to a store and would the store accept our money? So we're part of the system, and even though the system is detrimental to our best benefit, we have to continue to fight that very system that actually in some cases is providing us sustenance. The truth of the matter is, where would we be if these people went south on us and decided to really stretch their power over us? We would be in a world of hurt because we wouldn't have the I'm trying to think of the right word, the formation in place. We wouldn't have the structure in place to defend ourselves. All of that this is what we've been talking about. All that's been taken away from us. And as a result, this is what we're seeing today. So yes, I am here to push for restoration. I'm not wanting to overthrow anybody. I want to restore what was done wrong. I want what was wronged to be right. And I don't think there's anything ethically or legally wrong with that. And I admire people like Milo who can live within the system, but yet not live in the system. It's kind of like what the Bible says, you live in the world, but you're not in the world. There's something close to that. You're not of the world. Maybe that's what it was. You live in the world, but you're not of the world. Well, we're living in a system, but we don't want to be of the system. We want to bring something better. David kind of alluded to something, this is a passion of mine. Kids. I have a lot of grandkids, and I worry for their future. I worry when I see a story like this about the 7-year-old. I have a 7-year-old grandchild. My goodness, I couldn't imagine trying to talk to them about sex at this age. Not only trying to talk to them about sex, but having to change their sex for the rest of their life. That's shameful. Anyway, Milo, I know that you're extremely tired tonight. I want to give you an opportunity before we go. Any last words, and then we'll go to a break, and then we'll come back.
Well, actually, Riscalla, I thought there was something that I wanted to discuss, and I know you're against a break here, so take that. But, I'll stay on a few more minutes after we come back.
Great.
Because there was something I wanted to mention when you do return.
All right, excellent, good. All right, my friends, don't go away. You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show. Tonight I have Milo Townsend and I have David Callihan. And we're talking about something that happened a long time ago, but only because it affects us literally today are we talking about it, and we want to restore something that was done wrong. Really, that's what it all boils down to. We just want to make right something that was done wrong. I don't think that's asking for too much. We'll be right back.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin.
You're listening to WCET FM, America's Talk Station.
And as we have been programmed mentally, intellectually, one must be aware of this being programmed like a computer.
Programming that we are constantly assaulted by throughout our life conditions us, it programs us to a particular worldview.
The project is literally the secularization of the world. New secular or worldly order.
A new study says the news media have been pushing a gospel of godlessness on the American public.
Because this media is here and designed to make sure that they ask no critical questions. To make sure that the only thing that they are concerned about is having a good time. And so that is why today, one of the struggles that you have as young people, that when you want to do different events and you want to talk about real issues, you have the struggle of many of your peers who've been so conditioned in this matrix that they would rather party than listen to the truth. They would rather party and shop and go to the mall than to stand up for issues of justice. They're stuck in the matrix. But you have the responsibility of helping to wake them up.
Now, how do we know that there's a God?
After having been thoroughly brainwashed.
And how do we know that there's a creator? How do we know that there's a creator?
Better than Late Night in the Midlands.
There's nothing better than Late Night in the Midlands. I love to talk to people from the heartland. They're tremendous people. They really are.
Opinions, politics.
I'm going to give you 10 minutes tonight because you're tremendous people.
Kamala Harris.
She's a horror show.
Elizabeth Warren. Or Pocahontas.
But I mean, Elizabeth Warren. I love my Pocahontas. She is the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, and good old Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, oh my God, what a communist. He's not even a socialist. He is such a communist.
Then there's Sloppy Joe. Sleepy Joe.
Sleepy Joe Biden. Every time he sniffs a little girl's head.
You heard the man. Nothing better. Late Night in the Midlands. We cover everything.
Here we are. All right, everybody clam up.
Mr. Archie Bunker, speaking in reply to the editorial broadcast last Saturday.
Good evening, everybody. This is Archie Bunker of 704 Hauser Street, veteran of the big war, speaking on behalf of Guns for Everybody. Now, question. What was the first thing that the communists done when they took over Russia? Answer, gun control. And there's a lot of people in this country who want to do the same thing to us here in a kind of conspiracy, see. You take your big international bankers, they want to, masticate the people of this here nation like puppets on a wing. And then when they get that done, turn us over to the communists.
Oh, Archie, I'm glad they put you on a stool. You look taller sitting down.
Now, I want to talk about another thing that's on everybody's mind today, and that's your stick-ups and your skyjackers. Which, if that was up to me, I could end the skyjackers tomorrow.
You could?
All you got to do is arm all your passengers. You know what the passengers are armed? And then he ain't got no more superiority there. He ain't going to dare to pull out no rod. And then your airlines, then they wouldn't have to search the passengers on the ground no more. They just pass out the pistols at the beginning of the trip, and they pick them up again at the end. Case closed.
That's incredible,
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscalla, every Saturday night on the LNM Network from 9 p.m. to midnight.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill.
And now your host, Riscalla.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill.
All right, we are back. It is the Red Pill Reality Show. Yeah, a little bit of technical difficulty there. I am your host, Riscalla, and you can find us every Saturday night here on the LNM Network, www.latenightinthe-midlands.com. You can find us there. Click on Listen Live, or you can go to our Facebook page. If you go to the Facebook page, just click on Contact Us, and you will be right on the live streamer. Try to make it easy for you. Anyway, tonight I have with me David Callihan, and I have Milo Townsend, and we've been talking for the last 7 shows about something that occurred quite some time ago. But because it occurred quite some time ago, people think that, well, it's no big deal. A lot of people don't even know it occurred. I was shocked to find out about it. I was shocked to see some of the information that John Ainsworth was another gentleman that I've had the opportunity and the honor and the privilege of having on the show, who has taken probably thousands, at least hundreds of hours of research into this and pointed out how people who with deceptive means and less than honorable intent took us down a road that really wasn't intended for us. And as a result, we're suffering from that today. So let me welcome back David and Milo. Milo, let me go to you first. You said that there was something you wanted to discuss a little further, and I want to give you the opportunity to do that. So go ahead.
Yeah, you said that so nicely and so coy there about less than honorable means with regard to the Reconstruction Congress. Just chuckling about that. Okay, so before the break, we were talking about, strength in numbers and protection in numbers, safety. That kind of brings me to a point that I would like to sort of elucidate a little bit. A lot of people think they have to do basically exactly what we did here in North Carolina. And Texas did when they reestablished. They just dove right in. They were a group of people who had already known each other for a while, more or less, and had been looking for answers along these lines. So they were prepared to take on that struggle right away. But I want people to be aware, if they're listening, that there is more than one way to go about doing this. And I won't say that every way is equally valid, but I think this is an equally valid way. And let me start by giving an example. I'm sure you're familiar with the New Hampshire Free State Project, right?
I've heard of it.
Okay. Well, I don't know exactly what the dates were, but somewhere around like 2008, 9, 10, something like that. A bunch of people decided that, more or less libertarian leaning kind of people, they were like, well, we want to pick a state and we want to go just swarm to that state. And they picked New Hampshire, the live free or die state. And they didn't have enough people right away to swarm upon New Hampshire and overtake it politically for their libertarian cabal, if you will. So they developed a process, and the only reason that I'm speaking about their process is because we thought it was a great process, and we want to employ that if need be in states where people might not be quite ready to make the leap into fully reestablishing their state and declaring state citizenship as a personal status. And what they did in New Hampshire was they got people all over the country, all over America, to sign on to pledges. And so these people would say, I pledge to move to New Hampshire and, take up residence in that state as soon as, and I don't know what their number was, but just off the cuff, say 20,000 people, as soon as 20,000 people sign on to this pledge. So the pledge itself created a trigger, like a threshold, that would trigger everyone who had made the pledge to move to New Hampshire when that many people had signed on. And so imagine that, if you will, in the context of reestablishing a state. You don't have to physically move, but the concept is that you sign on to a pledge that you will reestablish the state, and, or at the very least, that you would alter your citizenship status and become a state citizen. So, you know, when a certain number of people have made the pledge to do so. And so what you have instead of physically moving is that you're moving your political allegiance, but you're waiting until you've got enough people who have committed to it.
That's a great idea.
This is a concept that's untried. In our context, we've not done this, but Cliff Muncie, our director of media for America's Remedy, he came up with this actually several years ago and kind of laid out, we may even have it in written format, sort of an explanation to some degree, but he laid out what this process would be like in the context of reestablishing and declaring state citizenship. And so we're hoping that people out there, if they're a little reluctant to just make the leap right away, sort of like the Polar Bear Club, if they don't want to just jump right in, then maybe they can consider this alternative. And I just like to put that out there for people to be aware of, that there is a way where they might be able to sort of gather the numbers before they actually take on the risk and the liability and the commitment to take that fight.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea. I think it's a really, really great idea. That would be the way to carry. You know, I think about, when you mentioned that, I was thinking about how parallel that was to something that we did many years ago in a business. We had somebody who was willing to buy something that we had, and we didn't have the money to manufacture it at the time. So what we did is they gave us a purchase order, or a willingness, if you will, like you were mentioning, a petition. They gave us a purchase order to buy this certain amount of stuff that we were ready to make for them, and we took that to the bank, and the bank used that as the horsepower to give us the loan to buy the stuff to make so that we could sell to these people. So the parallel that I see was by having somebody willing on paper to say, yes, I'm willing to buy this once they are able to make it, gave us the horsepower that we needed to move forward. It's very similar to what you're mentioning. Once we have, my goodness, I couldn't imagine if we had 20,000 people, what a movement that would be. We would really, really make a dent, a serious movement in this country if we could gather 20,000 people to think along the lines of all we're trying to do is restore what was taken away. We just want back what was intended for us to be. And I'm not really asking for a whole lot. So if you can imagine with as little as 20 people, I think Milo said, less than 20, can you imagine 20,000, what we could do with 20,000? That would be awesome. And, that, you know, I don't think that's out of the question. How many 100 million supposedly are there? 350 million is what we're told here in the United States. To get 20,000 out of that, it's really a small number, very, very small percentage. But it would make such a huge impact. It could literally change the future of our country. It's not, you know, not asking for a lot. What would that be? David, you seem to be pretty good with numbers. What do you think? How many out of 10? 2? Not even 2. Shoot, if that would be 20% of 350 million, my God, that would be a hell of a lot more than 20,000. So it'd be a very small number.
Well, 1% is 3.2 million.
So, you know, it's so, my gosh, it would be, you couldn't do it out of 10.
0.1% is 320,000, you know, so
wouldn't take
you're
a
not
whole lot
talking
of
very
us.
many.
Yep. And Milo, if you want to hang on, God bless you, man, because I want to hear what you've got to say, but I know that you've had a long day.
It has been.
It's been a long
Well,
time.
I want to say one more thing. You know, one of the biggest things that I get out of what David brings to this conversation is personal empowerment. I think the term that he likes to use is vested authority. And it just swells my soul to think that we could give people the power to run their lives. And I think really the hardest thing is getting people to want to have that responsibility. So if I had to leave with a thought tonight, I guess that would be kind of my thought. That's where my mind is, because I want to see people that want to be free, and I want to see people that want to have this responsibility and want to take this and run with it. So I hope those people are out there. I know a lot of people pay lip service to that ideal, but I really hope that there's people who mean that sincerely and genuinely and are actually willing to do what it takes, because those are the people we need.
And we can, you can get more information if you go to americasremedy.com. You can find more information there. I have a CD from there, which I think is just absolutely amazing. I'm going to be on the third time watching it here. It's just so full of information and stuff that you don't talk about. You know, I mentioned in the monologue, early in the monologue, how I have friends of mine that know everything that you could possibly imagine about a particular sport, you know, whatever that sport might be. And if it has players, they know about the players and the stats of the players and everything. But they don't know spit about our country. They don't know the way that things should be run. If they would devote a little more attention to these kind of things, we could start making a really positive impact on our future and our children and our grandchildren's future. That's what it's about for me. I have seen the deterioration of this country, again, particularly over the last 2 decades, but it's been over time, but the last 2 decades really stand out in my mind. It seems that ever since 9/11, this country has been in a tailspin, and it's eventually going to crash, is my concern. And the crash, in my mind, is going to be all-out war. That's what we're being pushed for, all-out war. You have a bunch of people who are literally operating as secret agents almost, in secret, blaming somebody for something and not allowing that person to defend themselves. That's not America, you guys. That's not where we were set up at. Well, you can't even defend yourself. I've had that experience, and I got to tell you, it's sickening. I can't imagine being the president of the United States and having the entire freaking media saying that you're guilty of something you didn't do. I only had a couple of people tell me, and it had a huge impact in my life. So I couldn't imagine. But I've been down that road, so I have some degree of idea of what it's like. This is insane, what is going on today. And there needs to be an end put to this. Literally an end. And the end I want to see put to it are the people who are criminals put away, and the restoration that needs to happen to be restored. Because if we don't do those things, I fear that we're going to have a war. I really do. And I'm not the only one who's talking about this. You hear more and more and more talk about civil war in this country. If you've never been involved in war, then you're blessed. You're blessed. If you've been involved in war, then you know what I'm talking about. And I would do anything I can to avoid that, because that's my fear right now. What we're going, this road that we're going down, it's not good. Not good at all. And the people's lack of interest is concerning. It really is. It's concerning. I don't know how to change that. I wish I knew the formula that it would, you know, they hear whatever it is and it would instantly change their mind. The only thing I know is that I feel responsible that now that I know this knowledge, it needs to be passed on to other people. Then you make the decision what you want to do with it. If you want to be part of the problem and sit back and do nothing, then you deserve the future that you have. But I won't sit back and lay quietly. I can't. That's not the way God wired me. I can't. It's just not part of me. I've had people tell me, you need to stop doing what you're doing. You're creating problems for yourself in the future. People in our government don't like the way that you're talking, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. I'm not here to please them. I'm here to fulfill something that is burning within me. And that burning is, I know something that is of value, and I need to share that with other people. Otherwise, I feel as though that I failed. You know, I failed in my mission. So anyway, we have people like Milo. We have people like David. David's an educator. You can tell when he begins to explain something how it comes from a teacher's background. And we have people like that who care enough to take the time out of their lives. This is something they're not getting back. This is something that they're spending in hopes that instead of a spending, it's an investment. An investment that somebody will hear what they have to say and begin to take action, tell other people about what's going on. And the idea of signing a contract and waiting until we have enough people to be able to make that, to have the power behind us, I think that's excellent. I think it's a great way to do it. So we have options. We're not presenting you with a problem without a resolution to that problem. We're presenting you with a problem, and we're telling you there are different ways to resolve this problem. And one of them we discussed, and I really like. I like the idea, and I think we can be very successful with that idea, where we send contracts out to people, and then you don't have to, like Milo said, you're not jumping in. The polar bear challenge, so to speak, because it's a very shaky ground that we're on right now, only because we're fighting a well-entrenched illegal system. But it is, regardless, it is a de facto, and illegal, it's not a system of the people, you guys. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that. You don't have to be an absolute brain surgeon to recognize what's going on. This is not the way that it was intended to be. We must do something to make things better for ourselves, for our children, for our loved ones, for our grandchildren, for the generations coming up. I never envisioned a generation coming up that was so entitled as some of these kids are today. It really disturbs me to see how, and some of them are my relatives. Some of them, I'm like shocked. But this is what we've created by not being involved. Whether you want to agree to that, whether you want to admit to that or not, that's the reality of it all. You have people who are, I don't know whether it's Milo or David, a small group of people, an oligarchy, so to speak, running everything. And because we're not speaking out for our rights, they're using our silence as their consent. And here we are today having this discussion about things like a 7-year-old boy being forced to make. I'm sorry, you'll never convince me that this child on his own is doing this. Somebody's coaching him into this, and I tend to believe it's the mom, to have this change in his life for the rest of his life. And we haven't been at this very long. I would venture to say, if somebody were to look up the data of people who have done this at an age where they were knowledgeable about what they were doing, I would venture to say there has to be a degree of those people who are very resentful of ending up doing that, and maybe even possibly trying to go back, because I hear stories about that as well. The bottom line is we are in a time in our lives today where things are going south, and it's not. It doesn't require it's like the elephant in the room, but nobody wants to talk about it. And the elephant being is lack of knowledge right now. And we are presenting to you tonight an idea. The idea is that there is a way to restore our rights, because our rights are not, we just don't have them. I don't care what you tell me. We don't have our rights the way they were intended to be. And that is something that is very important to me. Friends of mine have gone off to war, and friends of mine have not come back believing in that they were fighting for your right and my right, and Milo's right, and David's right. And if that's not the case, then all those people died in vain. I can't accept that. It was hard enough to accept that the wars that we were involved in were based on lies. That almost caused me a nervous breakdown, honestly. Just a complete mental breakdown. I just didn't know what to do with that information. But once I got a hold of that information, once I knew that information was accurate, once I knew that it was true, I couldn't keep my mouth shut. The same thing with this information. I've devoted 7 shows. I've never done this before. I've been at this for 5 years. I've never done this for any subject. Because this is vital. I am telling you, something is wrong in our country today. And this is a way to help restore it. To put these people back and hold their feet to the fire. Nobody's doing that. Somebody has to start somewhere. My gosh, if it took as little as 20 or less people to begin the process, what's to stop us? If you can sign a contract that says, okay, I'll do it, but we have to have so many people involved so that you'll know you'll have the horsepower behind you, what's wrong with that? You're not committing your life away unless the project comes to fruition. I think it's a great idea. And I think it's time that we start doing things like this to improve our country. We must become involved. Otherwise, they make the decisions and we just have to go follow right along, just like lemmings. I don't want to be a lemming. I don't think I've ever been a lemming. That's why I was such a problem in school.
You and me both.
I don't think I was ever been a lemming, but that's what it takes. God has put people on this planet as the what would you call us? The town criers, so to speak, sending the word out, giving the word out. Now you have it. You have the information. What you do it, that's up to you. And if you're somebody who just sits back and does nothing with it, then just understand you're part of the pollution. You're not part of the solution. I want to be part of the solution. Milo, thank you, man. I really appreciate it. Any parting words? I know you want to get going.
Oh, it's all right. No, I appreciate it every time. I really do. I love being on your show, and I appreciate all the effort that you put into giving us a platform to put this information out there and have great discussions with David as well.
This is vital. We can talk about the politics and the insanity that's going on all day long, but they're of their own world. They're going to be doing whatever they're doing. We can talk about it, but it ain't going to do spit. This is vital. Right. This is something that the knowledge that is passed on can literally change our lives. So that's, again, this is why I've never done this before in the 5 years I've been doing this show. I've never done more than one episode of one thing. I've had people come back, but we never 7. They just haven't done it. And again, it's because I truly believe this is vital for people to know. I was shocked when I found out. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And then, many times, I don't know how many of you guys listening out there believe what I'm about to say, but I can point you to a video that can prove to you what I'm about to say. Prayer is powerful. Prayer is very powerful. And I've been praying for a long time. God, I know that there's something wrong. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but there is something wrong because I can see what's going on in our world today, and that's not the way that we're supposed to be at all. We have completely gone off track, totally. And slowly but surely, people cross the path of mine, and I come across other people, and I begin to get answers. One of those people was David. Another person was Angel. I would have never met David if I had never met Angel. I don't know how in the world Angel found me, but I think it was along similar circumstances. She was looking for people for answers. And she found me, and I found her, and then we found David and Milo and John and Paul. And that's how it works. And you continue to search throughout the people that you have, and you'll find that there's a lot more people who are like-minded. I believe that there's a lot of people who believe what we're saying tonight. If they heard it, they would believe it. That we were overthrown in 1861, I think was the number. I'm not real clear about that number, but in the late 1800s. And we're not living under the pretenses and the intention that the forefathers and that we were told we were supposed to be living under. And it's pretty evident today. I don't think that's an arguable statement. That's pretty evident that we are not living as free people today. You have to have permission to do anything, everything, just about, except maybe go to the bathroom. And who knows how long before that's going to be. That's not how we're... That's
it, really. Permission. I've thought several times about this phrase that John says often, is that, subjugated with privileges. People think they're free, but really they're just operating under subjugation, and they just happen to have permission to do X, Y, Z. Yeah.
Some of it I can somewhat understand. If a driver's license, you want to make sure somebody's, experienced, and even that's a joke, by the way. But I understand. I can somewhat understand. But some of it, no. There's no way in the world. Why would I need a hunting license? Why would I need a license to go out, especially if I'm somebody's hunting for food? So I have to pay you to go get my food? That doesn't make sense to me. Just like the tax thing. I have to pay you. I work for me. I never get that time back. Like I said earlier, you guys don't get this time back. That's what makes me appreciate people like you. I'm not going to get that time back when I'm working for an employer. So whatever money that they give me, I have earned on my own. What right do you have as a government to take that from me? You don't have any right for that. But they deceive us into all this. That's why I know all these things were wrong. All of these things were wrong. And when it came down to the bottom line as a small business owner, what we're really concerned with, after all is said and done, what's the bottom line? What am I left with? What I'm left with is that we were deceived, and I know that, like an onion, like many, many layers of deception. Not only were we deceived, but we were overthrown. That bothers me. That means that all the people that have fought for this country have fought under false pretenses, and they don't even know it. Many of them don't even know it. What kind of evil would carry on like that? We want to restore what is right. And I believe that it won't take a lot of us. I really don't think it'll take a lot of us to do it. And what we're trying to do is just make something that was done in deception out in the open so people can come to their own conclusion. And I believe that the majority of the people would conclude something that was done right, something that was done wrong needs to be made right. That's all we're asking. Not much. I don't think it's more than that. Is it, Milo? Are we asking for more than that?
That's exactly what it is. And is that not exactly why we have courts? Is that not their whole purpose for existence? I mean, the whole premise of justice is to right wrongs.
Yeah. And if you understand what's happened in our court system, they're all whacked out. You can go before a court with something that is clearly unconstitutional, and yet they will find in favor of the prosecutor instead of the defense. So we know that there's something very, very wrong. We got to start doing something about making it right. And this is the start for me. This is a vital component. And the idea that you brought up tonight about the contracts, the willingness to sign a contract, and go make the commitment once, however many people are involved, I think is an excellent way to do it.
That's cool. I'm glad that you appreciate that, Riscalla. We'll have to talk more about that. And, really it matters when the rubber meets the road and people start showing an interest and say, I want to do this. So that's really the thing that we're waiting on to put it into practice. But as soon as we find people in a state that say we want to reestablish, we just want them to know their options. We want them to know what kind of processes are available for them at their disposal. But I'm going to let you and David carry the torch now. I have great confidence in y'all, and I'll look forward to listening to the remainder of the show on the archive.
All right, my friend.
And thank you again.
God bless you, Milo.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
David, you want to say bye?
See you, Milo. Have a good one.
All right, David. We'll talk. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Milo.
Uh-huh.
All right, David. Wow. That's a lot to digest there. But it is what it is, and the fact of the matter remains that things are not right, and we must do something to begin to rectify the situation. And I say we must. Maybe that's not correct. I must do what I can in order to help rectify the situation, to bring about a positive future. I used to say, let's bring about a change. Anybody can bring about a change. The last administration proved that. What a horrible change we went through. So I don't want to bring about a change. I want to bring about a positive change, a change that benefits everybody. And the way that the originating fathers who founded this nation put it all together had a way to do that. There was a series of checks and balances that were far more reaching than what we're seeing today. And the result of them being lost is, in some cases, we live in a police state. We literally live in a police state. The police have the same equipment that the soldier has. It's identical. The only difference is the uniform. So who are they going to be loyal to? They're going to be loyal to their paycheck? How many times, I look at the data, and people, I'm not anti-police. So don't get me wrong. It's not like I think all of them are criminals, but there are a criminal element within them. And the problem is that many of them know these criminal elements, and they won't stand up because they would themselves be knocked down. So what I'm telling you is that some of the data that I have seen is that police have killed more people since 2001 than soldiers have died in the wars. Now, you can go check that if you want, but I'm telling you I've seen it from 3 different sources, so I think it's relatively accurate. More people have died at the hands of the police since 2001 than soldiers are killed in the war. Just stand out in your mind. No other free country, called free country anyway, has the police problem that we have. I don't think they had a single death in some of these countries for the whole year. We can't go a day without death. So there's something very wrong going on. And for me, it stands out like a sore thumb. It's not one specific thing. It's a myriad of things. But when you begin to look at them and break them down to get to the core of them all, the core of them all is one word: deception. Time and time and time and time again, that word comes into play. People with good hearts, with good meaning, with good intent are deceived. And in this deception, they are carried out, and they continue living a life of deception. That doesn't set with me. And I know that there are other people who think along the same lines. I don't want to live a lie. That's not, to me, that's one of the most important things of a human being. The honor of you as a human being is how much truth are you living? How much truth is in your life, and how much of your life is a lie? How many times do you hear about people who live these, quote, double lives? They're married to one woman and they have another lady on the side. To me, I abhor that. It just drives me crazy. I can't stand that. I was married for 26 years. I didn't go around doing things like that. I didn't even think about things like that. It just wasn't my character. And somewhere along the line, all of that has been watered down. The idea of being loyal to one person, the idea of holding a family together. The family today is under the greatest attack it has ever been, in my experience. Under more attack in different directions. My God, when you're talking about a 7-year-old being told whether they're a boy or a girl, and if they're a girl, they could be a boy. If they're a boy, they could be a girl. How crazy is that? Don't you see that there's something that is just completely out of kilter here? And it starts from the top down. It starts from all of these people running around trying to literally influence our lives, right and left. And they do it through deception, time and time and time again. That word comes into play. I want to get that out of the way. I want to go back and restore back to the truth. And one of the ways to do that is to let people know you've been deceived. Now that you have the knowledge, you make the decision what you want to do with it. When I was given the knowledge, I made the decision. I'm not going to remain quiet. I'm going to tell other people what I've found out. And then they're going to have to make a decision. Life is about making decisions. You make the wrong ones, you're going to suffer for it later on in life. I have a friend of mine, I'll get to you in just a minute, Dave. I have a friend of mine that I grew up with. He's my best friend. I was his best man at his wedding. Knew him since I was 11 or 12 years old. There was a time in his life when he made some bad decisions. He decided to use drugs and use a needle. Well, he finally worked his life through that and became clean, and was clean for many years, for decades, for 30 years. He was clean. But later on in life, he developed hepatitis C, which was directly from those needles that he used, and he ended up dying of cancer. He was younger than I am. He's not with me today because he made a decision that was poor. Tonight, I'm offering you a decision. The information that you have, the information that we're giving you, you can either do one of two things. You can toss it in the trash can, or you can act on it. One of the ways you can act on it, and I am not affiliated with this website in any way, shape, or form. I'm only affiliated with trying to get the truth out there, and this website will help you. Go to americasremedy.com. Look at what they have to offer. The DVD that I was given is just so jam-packed full of information. I'm literally going on my third time around watching it because I know this is stuff I missed the first 2 times that I've watched it. If you are interested in trying to make a positive change in our future, all of us, if you know anything about me, you know that I try to work deals where both parties continuously benefit because those are the longest lasting and the best deals that you can make. And that's what I'm offering you tonight, a benefit for everybody. Why? Kind of selfish in a way. I'm part of everybody. You're part of everybody. This is an opportunity for us to begin to make a change. I'm not saying this is going to happen overnight. It's going to take a long time. It took us a long time to get to where we are. And so like people who go on a diet, they expect to lose all of their weight in like a month. You didn't get there in a month, my friend. You got there over a long period of time. Give yourself some time to get back to that position. That's the same thing that I'm talking about here. Give us some time, but we got to start. You got to make the first step. You got to make the commitment. And with that, I'm going to go to Dave. Go ahead, David.
Gee, where do we want to go? There's so many aspects of this. One of the things I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit tonight. And it's funny because we don't sit down and talk before we have these shows.
Correct.
About where we're going to go with them.
Yeah.
But there's just so much that we have to get into that it doesn't really matter. I just so people know, I'm on 11 years of studying this material. This is not brand new stuff. And but let me tell you, I want to tell you why I became interested in this, Riscalla, because I think it's germane to this whole conversation. And I think you remember the first time that we ever talked, I got on Michael Vera's show that Friday night, and then I was on your show. That I came and called into your show the next night.
Yep.
And I started out by sharing the two principles that I kind of lead with. One is that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. When are we going to stop being insane anymore? When are we going to do something different? And then the second thing that I point out is Jorge Santayana's famous line that they who cannot remember the bad past are condemned to repeat it. And I put the word bad in there because in the context of his book, that's what he meant.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the only thing that makes sense. You're never condemned for repeating good things. But then the corollary of that I came up with was they who can remember the good past are blessed to repeat it, but they who cannot remember the good past get what's coming to them. And we are on that road so significantly. I have a mentor. He's passed away many years ago, but he has taught me some tremendous things. He happened to have been a friend of President Reagan's. And many years ago, he told me, he said, you don't need to know all the consequences of walking in front of a moving freight train for them to happen.
Good point.
And by golly, that's where we are right now in our society. There are so many things that people are doing individually and as a society today that we just don't even know the consequences. But we're in what's called the seventh cycle of empire. We're in the last cycle of empire. We're at the point when money is being spent like crazy to further a military-industrial complex. And every single empire that has ever gone the way of, just disintegration, that's the last part of the last stage of empire. And there's only been a few countries in the history of the world who have, kind of short-circuited that. I think the one I think of is it was Nineveh, when God was going to judge them, and Jonah didn't want to go there because he knew that God would be gracious and he would forgive. And they did change their thinking and continued the society a little longer than normal. But generally speaking, the history of humanity is pretty much, it operates off of the principle of the very first line of the Declaration of Independence. The laws of nature and nature's God don't change. And by the way, I like to throw in there the laws of human nature and nature's God, because we weren't talking about physics or chemistry or biology in those laws. We're talking about human nature. We're talking about the way that human beings operate in society and in their relationships to one another. And we need to understand that the things that are going on right now, and the things that are going bad right now, and things look like they're going to hell in a handbasket, is not because it's some arbitrary, just happenstance process. It's because of the choices that are being made by individuals that all well up into a mass choice. And right now we're in a conflict because we actually there's a polarity going on. There's people who have two different sets of ideas that are in conflict. But this is not by accident that this is going on. The powers that be, that do exist, by the way, this is not conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact. Okay? There is a mindset of social engineering and people control.
Absolutely.
That is trying to get us to be enemies to one another. Okay? And we need to understand that this is going on. For instance, I do not personally, and I have very, very dear friends that won't even mention names, who speak out and they talk about certain ideological factions and say, these people are bad and these people are good and so on. I do not personally buy that. I personally, I don't buy into the left-right statist, anarchist spectrum. Okay, because what we're talking about, what we've got to do is find every person in this country who believes that freedom is important and is the most important thing we need to pursue. And we have got to find each other, and we need to literally put aside some of our ideological thinking, okay, in order that we can possibly win. And before you think, well, Dave, that sounds like that's not a workable plan, let me read something to you. And this is taken from a document. I've changed a little of the wording of this, okay? But imagine that we had a document that said something like this. And let's suppose that we put together a committee, and that committee decided to put this wording together, and then they went through parliamentary procedure, and they wrote it all out, and they got it all laid down the way it needed to be. They used Robert's rules or Jefferson's rules or Mason's rules or whatever, and they put together the set of laws. And by the way, those are the different sets of rules that are used by legislatures, just so you know. And it says this, resolved unanimously. So they agreed 100% that it is recommended, and let's suppose that this is a document by a state, okay, by a state legislature, or some other, high-level organization. It says, resolved unanimously that it is recommended to the several states and territories of this nation to enter into such or the like resolutions for the mutual defense and protection as may be entered into by the people of Florida in the foreseeable future. As our opposition to the settled plan of the current rogue administration to enslave America will be strengthened by a union of all ranks of men and women in the state, we do most earnestly recommend that all former differences about religion or politics and all private animosities and quarrels of every kind from henceforth cease and be forever buried in oblivion. And we entreat, we conjure every man and woman by his or her duty to the laws of nature and nature's God, his or her country, and his or her posterity, cordially to unite in defense of our common rights and liberties.
Well,
that is something that would be, we could literally get people to buy into, don't you think?
I think it sounds very fair and very logical.
Do you know what I just quoted from? I took the Maryland Resolves of 1774, and I rewrote it in a modern context. And only changed maybe 8 or 10 words. And they're said that, I have it right here so I can pull it up and read it. I'll read what they're said, and it's very similar. Hang on here, I got to just find it real quick. But they said a very similar thing. Here it is. As our opposition to the settled plan of the British administration to enslave America will be strengthened by a union of all ranks of men in this province, we do most earnestly recommend that all former differences about politics or religion and all private animosities and quarrels of every kind from henceforth cease and be forever buried in oblivion, and we entreat, we conjure every man by his duty to God, his country, and his posterity, cordially to unite in defense of our common rights and liberties. That was the last sentence of what were called the Maryland Resolves, and this is why that's important. The Maryland Resolves was one of the documents that led to the Articles of Association and the creation of the First Continental Congress. What happened was that the founding generation back then where somebody figured out a plan and they disseminated it all through the colonies. Okay? And everybody in every community did the same thing, all the way up and down the seaboard of what became the United Colonies of America. Which, by the way, is what the name was that the First Continental Congress gave to the country before it was the United States. But the common word in both of them was united, because they actually used a practice called association and got men to subscribe to an oath to this document, to this association through a document. And they all signed on, literally signed on, subscribed. Okay? And then they all got on the same page, and anybody that wasn't on that page, they actually shunned them. They put them, took them aside. They actually called them into meetings and said, "Why aren't you joining with our cause?" "Well, we're going to have nothing to do with you." And this was, it was a serious movement of those who cared about freedom. And that's where we have to get to. We have to get to where we first, and I get back to that point of relevance. We got to figure out what's the relevant issue that we need to identify, which is the make or break of this thing. And that's where we really need to hone in and figure things out. Because otherwise we're going to be fragmented and we're going to be all over the map. I've talked to people who, some people would say, they're in the conservative circle, say, you don't want to have anything to do with them. They're too progressive. They're too liberal. But I've got people that are friends of mine that I've talked to literally in the last couple of weeks who are saying, yeah, Dave, freedom is the issue. I could put aside everything else. And that's really part of where we need to start wrapping our minds around this thing. We got to figure out what's the important point. And we've got the history to tell us what the founders did. Okay. By the way, I don't like the term founding fathers, not because it's not a good term, but it gives this implication that there were about 100 to 150 guys that made America. Absolutely the opposite of the truth. They were just the guys who raised to the top of the cream on top by local elections, leading to county elections, leading to provincial elections, and then leading to continental elections. And the guys that were at the top were the leaders that got elected to represent everybody else in the final phase. But if those original phases hadn't occurred, there would never have been a United States. And that's where we're at. I like to say that we're the innovators, okay? And it's really an exciting place to be, Riscalla, where we're beginning to try to map out a plan that eventually can have legs.
And make a heck of a change, a heck of a positive change.
Yeah.
Because it will return and restore balance the way it was intended to be. And that's something that we just don't have today. All right, let me take my last break, and I'll be coming back. Don't go away. You're listening to the Red Pill Reality Show. Tonight I have what's left with me is David. David's decided to stick it out with me a little bit longer. And, of course, you on the other end of the microphone, thank you for doing that as well. And we'll be right back.
You're listening to WCET FM, America's talk station. Better than Late Night in the Midlands.
There's nothing better than Late Night in the Midlands. I love to talk to people from the heartland. They're tremendous people. They really are.
Opinions, politics.
I'm going to give you 10 minutes tonight because you're tremendous people.
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris. She's a horror show.
Elizabeth Warren. Pocahontas.
But I mean, Elizabeth Warren, I love my Pocahontas. She is the gift that keeps on giving.
Oh, and good old Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders, oh my God, what a communist. He's not even a socialist. He is such a communist.
Then there's Sloppy Joe. Sleepy Joe.
Sleepy Joe Biden. Every time he sniffs a little girl's head.
You heard the man. Nothing better. Late Night in the Midlands. We cover everything.
And as we have been programmed mentally, intellectually, one must be aware of this being programmed like a computer.
The programming that we are constantly assaulted by throughout our life conditions us, it programs us to a particular worldview.
The project is literally the secularization of the world. New secular or worldly order.
A new study says the news media have been pushing a gospel of godlessness on the American public.
Because this media is here and designed to make sure that they ask no critical questions. To make sure that the only thing that they are concerned about is having a good time. And so that is why today, one of the struggles that you have as young people, that when you want to do different events and you want to talk about real issues, you have the struggle of many of your peers who've been so conditioned in this matrix that they would rather party than listen to the truth. They would rather party and shop and go to the mall than to stand up for issues of justice. They're stuck in the matrix. But you have the responsibility of helping to wake them up.
Now, how do we know that there's a God?
After having been thoroughly brainwashed.
And how do we know that there's a creator?
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin.
Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. Take the red pill, take the blue pill, take the red pill, take the blue pill. You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Now, from sunny South Florida, it's the Red Pill Reality Show with your host, Riscalla. Every Saturday night from 9 p.m. to midnight on the L&M Network. And now, your host, Riscalla.
All right, we are back. Thank you for taking the time tonight to allow us to share with you what we found and the information that we have. A big thank you to all of you subscribers and you people who donate, not only financially but of your time. Thank you. Greatly appreciate it. If you're not a subscriber, go on over to www.latenightinthe-midlands. Take a look around. You'll see there's a donate page there, a donate button on the page there, or you can be a subscriber. Many times I've said this is not about the money, but unfortunately it is about the money. And what do I mean by about that? We're not asking for $20 or $25 or $30. We're not looking to get rich off of getting people to subscribe to the station. We're asking for $5 in an entire month. So that's what I mean by that. We're not looking for to buy another home, in somewhere in another country or another state or something like that. We're looking to pay the bills. Really, that's what it boils down to. There are a variety of different bills that have to be paid every month. And there's, we have there's office space, there's internet lines, there's computers, there's the maintenance, there's electric that has to be paid. There's a variety of things that have to be done. So please remember, anything that I ask of you, I don't do myself. I am a subscriber. Why? Because I believe in what we're doing. I believe in the LNM Radio Network. I've been a subscriber since the time that I've had to request people to subscribe. There was a time when everything was absolutely free because people were more giving. And it seems as we've gone down this road in this country, people are becoming more difficult financially for people. Again, this is why we're only asking $5. And it's not something that we like to ask all the time about, but it is something that is important for us. If you want to be able to keep us going, to keep these kind of conversations happening, we need your help. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. Can't do it without you guys. And because we do it basically for you guys, as well as, in my case, as well as myself, because I'm part of everybody. Anyway, all right, so you can subscribe, you can donate. A big shout out to LNM Radio Network for allowing us the platform. Thank you to WCET, WKYAH out of, I can't remember where they're out of. I think Nevada or Arizona maybe. They also carry some of the shows. Thank you to them. It's not going to happen without help, and that's really what it's about for us. Knowledge, not any one person has all of the answers, but everyone together, that's a different story. We can come up with the answers. We can find the answers. And that's really what it's about, is introducing you to some information that I was introduced to in the hopes that it would affect you in the way that it affected me. It's vital to restore something that was not properly handled. I'm trying to word it in the kindest words I can. But these people really were deceptive, and they were anything but honest. And I'm tired of this going on over and over and over again. It all started for me a long time ago, and the more that I dig, the more lies that I find up until today. How many of you believe this guy Epstein is dead? I don't believe he's dead for a moment. I know, the people at Riscalla, you're crazy. Maybe I am. But this man was a multi-billionaire. He had money than some smaller countries had. Don't you think for a moment that he could find somebody who looks like him? They knocked that guy off, and they call him Epstein, and now he's living the fat life somewhere. I know it sounds crazy. How many of you believe that what I'm saying is a possibility? What happened to the funeral? I didn't see a funeral. Don't tell me that things are right today. Things are not even close to being right. When you're telling me that they're going to take a 7-year-old boy and turn him into a girl, come on. And we have nonsense. People are now literally cursing this president because he's trying to stop wars. You're going to tell me things? Come on. We've got to do better. We have got to do better. And one of the ways, one of the beginnings of doing better is to live in the truth. You can't live in the truth if you allow a deception to continue. Then you become part of that deception. I won't have any part of that. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. For the, 8th show, David? Is this number 8 now?
I think so.
Yeah. Because I don't want to be part of that. I will not be part of the deception. Whether it was this that I found out about or all the other deceptions that we've been led through from 9/11 on up. I won't be part of it. As soon as I realized what happened on 9/11, and I want to say I knew what happened, but that's really nobody. I don't think anybody on the outside knows. But I had a better idea. I knew more than the average person knew. I had to start telling people. What you were told about 9/11 is a lie. A lot of people thought I was crazy. A lot of people thought I was a troublemaker. A lot of people really feared for me, for my mental well-being. They really thought I'd gone off the deep end because I was saying what you were told about 9/11 is a lie. It is not true. There is no way that those aircraft brought those buildings down. I was called crazy. I was called all kinds of things. Well, we're dealing with the same thing here. Why? Because we're dealing with a deception that has been going on for decades, centuries, over a century or over a century and a half almost. This has been going on. And when you compare it to something like 9/11, which has only happened almost 20 years ago, and people are so firm and absolutely bent on believing what they were told just 20 years ago. This has been going on for over a century and a half. So this programming, as part of that commercial said, it is a programming. It's a conditioning of your mind to think along a certain way, to not ask questions, to accept authority as the ultimate answer to whatever the question may be that may arise. That's not what it's about. And that's not the way I conceive that this country was founded. It was about freedom, total freedom. They were coming from an oppressive state where they were being taxed, and I got news for you, they were being taxed a hell of a lot less than we're being taxed today, and that caused a revolt. But they understood the importance. It's something David said. What is the importance of freedom to you? This is really what all of this boils down to. I guess when it's all said and done, David brought up a good point. Where's the priority in your life with regard to freedom? Is it, oh, well, I'll get to that, as soon as I can take care of something else? I got news for you. Without the freedom, without true freedom, I don't think anybody can be really happy, because I can't help but feel that they would feel within themselves, so I'm just not feeling right. Something is just not right. I think about sometimes when I take my dog out. That little booger, I love him to death, but he would run off the first second I take him off that leash, and it would take me forever to find him again. So I put him on a leash, and sometimes I feel badly, so I have a double leash. I put him on a double leash. So he thinks he's free. Well, he is free to a certain degree, to the length of that leash. So yes, we are free to a certain degree, to the length of which this government, which was founded in a deceptive manner, allows us to be. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. They're supposed to be concerned with how we feel about them. They don't give a hoot. They don't give a rat's behind about how we feel about them. They're openly and brazenly telling you, you are going to do what we tell you to do. We are signing laws. You have to be injected because we signed a piece of paper. You have to give up your guns because we signed a piece of paper. And on and on and on it goes. When is it going to be, you have to die because you're too expensive for us to keep you alive anymore? Or you have to die because you're too old? Or you have to die because you have a particular disease? Because that's coming. That's the slope that we are on. We have been told, and they have celebrated, the killing of children is okay. It's all right if the mother says, I don't want this child. Even after the child has been born, God have mercy on us. Even after the child has been born. You ever seen what a child looks like after it's been born? It's a fully developed human being. These people are celebrating the ability to kill a fully developed human being. You don't think there's something wrong today? All of this falls upon deception. And in order for us to begin to live a life of decency, I don't know how anybody could think that that's decent. It brings tears to my eyes. That's decent to do something like that. How could you do something like that? How can you be a doctor and claim an oath of do no harm and do something like that and hold pride in what you've done? That truly moves me. I just can't imagine. How could we be a society that celebrates something like that? And that's what we've come to. So my dog's having a nightmare. He's probably thinking about what I'm talking about. My dog's underneath my desk, and he's just crying away.
You're really lamenting over there. You're affecting your dog.
I'm even affecting him at this point. But honestly, I'm trying to express to people, this is how, in my opinion, maybe you, on the other end, maybe you don't think this way, but this is my opinion. This is how low we have become. This is how deteriorated our society has become. I never could envision that people would celebrate the killing of a child, an innocent child, just beginning of life, and they celebrate the idea of killing this child. And the way they kill the child is not nice either. There's no humane way to kill. All right, I don't care what you're doing. You're taking a life. What are you, like this one abortionist who likes to boast about, I cut their vocal cords so I can't hear them crying. How disgusting is that? How can you be a human being, call yourself a human being, and do something like that? Again, I'm just kind of giving you, this is just the tip of the iceberg, you guys. There's so many other things that are messed up. But I'm pointing out to you things that are open. This is in your face. This is stuff that is, I'm not making up. It's easily verifiable what I'm telling you. You go to check any of the news sources about what happened in New York and how they lit up I don't know I can't remember what building it was. They lit up some buildings in celebration of this. We really need help today.
Empire State Building, probably.
Maybe it was that one. They lit up something in celebration of all of this. It was very, very sad, and these people are celebrating and going on and carrying on about this. I truly believe that many of these people are good-hearted people. They have been deceived. And that is what has happened. We've got to get out of this era, this thing of deception that's been going on for so long, over and over and over. I keep finding that we've been lied to about this, we've been lied to about that, and it burns me to no end. And when I find out that something that is true and accurate, I want other people to know about that. That's why we've been doing what we've been doing these past shows. I want people to know this nation was overthrown in the late 1800s. We are not living under the government that was intended for us to be living under. And I believe, with all that is within me, I believe that because of that, that is why things are so messed up with regard to our rights and our freedom. Our society, that's a different story. That is something that has been programmed into our society. You know, David, you said by a small group of people, it's not a conspiracy theory that these small group of people, they're so hell-bent on what they believe in that they have made a structure in Georgia called the Georgia Guidestones. And on this Georgia Guidestones, I think it's 10 or 11 languages that they have engraved into these stones. Their quote 10 commandments, it's their 10 commandments. The very first one is to maintain humanity under 500 million people. Now, I don't know what the true number is, but I know we are into the billions on this planet with regard to human beings. If you can imagine, it takes 1,000 millions, 1,000 of them, millions, to make 1 billion. And I know there's far more than 1 billion of us on this planet. They want to reduce that to 500.
Getting close to, I think it's over 7.
It depends on where you look. I've heard 6 on the low, 9 on the high. Whatever that number is, it's in the billions. And they're talking about 500 million. 1/2 of 1 billion is what they want to reduce the planet to. These people are hell-bent on doing this. They're very serious about what they're talking about. They want to guide reproduction wisely. What do you think that means, guide reproduction wisely? That means that you're going to have permission to have a child, and otherwise you'll be sterilized. That's how I see it in my mind. Improving fitness and diversity. Improving fitness, how are they going to improve fitness? Their idea of improving fitness is to incorporate robotics into our lives. They want to turn us into half human, half computers. And then diversity. Where's diversity gotten us, by the way? By allowing all of these people into our country illegally, I might add. And what has that done to our different cities where all these people have flown in, just literally come into our cities and saturated our cities with a wide diversity of people? We've lost our country. That's what's happened. Unite humanity with a living new language. What would that new language be? What might that new language be? Rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. See, they love to put words together that are pleasing to the ear, but the reality of it is something completely different. The reality of it is 100% control over you and me. That's what it all boils down to. And they are so hell-bent about bringing this about that they have engraved it in stone in 10 or 11 languages, if I'm not mistaken, and set it up for all the world to see in Georgia.
Brave New World.
Were you aware of that? Did you know about that?
Yeah, I did. I'm familiar with it, yes.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that think that I'm making it up. Just go online and go look it up. Georgia Guidestones. The 10 Masonic Commandments, some people call it. But that's what it is. It's 10, I think it's 10. I may be mistaken, but I think it's 10 because I just happened to equate it to the 10 Commandments of the numbers of the Bible. But I think it's 10 of them. And I remember the first one was 500 million. Maintain humanity at 500 million. They want to do away with quite a few of us. And they're getting away with it to this very day. It's already going on. It's been going on for some time. And it's going to get worse. When you look up in the sky and you see those lines up there in the sky that I've told many of you about so many times, that is not what they've told you it is. They've even given it a new name now. They have a new name. I can't think of it, but they've got they call them clouds now. After the airliners lay them out for us to breathe later on in the day. There's now people who are rising up about the fluoride. Fluoride is a neurotoxin, yet people are convinced that it's the fluoride that's going to keep me from getting cavities, yeah? Look up the data about fluorosis, I think maybe a better way to pronounce it, where people's teeth are literally rotting because of the fluoride. If it's doing that to your teeth, what is it doing to your organs in your body? Again, you're being deceived. It's so many, on so many layers. We've got to start cutting through the layers and start living in truth. And one of the ways that we have been talking about this last 7 shows is to understand that this country was overthrown in the late 1800s, and we have a way to bring back what was taken illegally from us. It would be like me coming to your house and convincing you of one thing and literally taking something from you and walking away, and you finding out later that what I told you was not what was going to happen at all. So in essence, I stole from you, and all you're asking for is give me back what is rightfully mine. That's really what it boils down to. We want back what is rightfully ours as a people. I was always told that America was the land of opportunity, the land of the free, the home of the brave. I got news for you. The opportunities have dwindled. The land of the free, well, we know that's not true, not truly free. And the brave, well, they've been pretty much conditioned to remain silent because that is what has caused us to end up where we are today with the insanity that we're witnessing today. The lack of those who know something is wrong, see something is wrong, and yet refuse to stand for it. In some cases, I understand, because if they do, they literally get wiped out because of the system is crooked. But somewhere the crack has to be made in the dam. And it's going to be people like David, people like me, people like Milo, people like Mike Vera, who begin that, put that question in your mind, and then say to you, now you have the information. Now it's up to you what you do with it. Because in my world, to hold that information and not let it out, then I would be guilty of doing wrong. I would be part of the problem and not part of the solution. And David is along the same way. He's an educator. You can tell when David explains something, it comes from an educational background, an educator's background. It's not just somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. 11 years, I didn't realize. You've been at it for 11 years, my friend. My gosh.
Yeah. Let me share one thing. I know we're getting close to the end. On a positive note of what we've got the opportunity to learn. The thing that got me really going on this, I had been reading some material by Dr. Edwin Beer, and I've talked about him a few times, and he's written about 3,000 pages just in books on the Second Amendment. He's written another 1,600 pages on the banking system. And I was reading some of his material, and I was reading a 2,300-page book of his that's really incredible. It's called Sword and Sovereignty, the Constitutional Principles of the Militia of the Several States. And in chapter 21 of that book, he tells a story that just blew my mind. Imagine that if in the state of Florida, this week we learned that about 9 months ago, that the laws that govern how the state police and the National Guard and the county sheriffs and the city police and the fire departments and the EMT units and the tax agency for transportation all expired about 8 or 9 nights, months ago, and we didn't know it until tomorrow. Okay, all of them. And then, so we get on the phone and we contact the governor and say, we need to have this law put back. And we get a hold of our legislators, and they contact him, and he says, no, you know what? You've been talking against Trump too much. We're not going to let you have a meeting to, a session to do that. What would the average Floridian do? Would they have any idea what to do?
I don't think so.
No,
I wouldn't.
Absolutely not.
I wouldn't.
But let me tell you what happened in 1774, because I gave you an analogy of what actually happened. The militia law of the colony of Virginia expired. And because the governor, his name was Dunmore, would not allow the House of Burgesses to be in session. He called it proroguing the legislature. And what had happened was it had expired about 8 or 9 months prior, and they didn't know it because they weren't allowing the clerks to, the clerks weren't working in the legislature because the legislature wasn't meeting, so they didn't even know it had expired. And they went to the governor and said, they called him Your Majesty back then, believe it or not, we're asking you that you would allow the legislature back into session to put the militia law back, because this was what those things was that I just described was essentially what the militia law was. It governed all of the police powers and all the basic taxing powers, okay? And so he said, no, you're not going to have the legislature because you're saying bad things about King George. All right? So here's what happened in Virginia, and this is what got my attention. Within literally months, in every single county in the colony of Virginia, which included West Virginia at the time, Riscalla, they put back the Militia Act of 1738 under their own recognizance. And I went, how did they have the wherewithal to know how to do that? And that's what put me on the track of learning all the things that I've learned over the last few years.
See, we couldn't do that today.
Because when I went, huh?
We could not do that today.
At the moment, we would be toast.
Yeah. So how can you tell me
But
we're free?
The goodness is we know the history now, okay? Not just, because of the people I know and because of stuff I've studied and some others like John coming up with his research, we are now beginning to pull together all the components. So there is hope. But the problem we have is whether we have enough people who care.
And that's by design.
What's going to get them to care?
Yeah. This lackadaisical, I don't want to get involved kind of thing is, this has been conditioning, programming, whatever you want to call it. But it's been going on for a long time.
Ignorance.
Yeah.
They call it.
For a long time, this has been going on. This is part of what we're fighting.
But the goodness is there's us who care, and we're going to keep on doing what we're doing right to the end, right until, we can't do anymore. We're probably already out of time, but we're going to do it anyway. So at least that's where I'm coming from anyway.
I think of it sometimes as you're in a building and it's on fire, and at what point do you think of the people who were in 9/11? 100 floors up, and they were jumping from the building. Why? Because they were going to choose. Okay, maybe it was too late to go down the stairs, but they were going to choose if they were going to die, how they were going to die. Well, that's kind of how I feel. I'm going to choose. I'm not going to just accept this de facto government. It's supposed to be a government by the people, for the people. Clearly, it's not that. And that's all we're asking for, a restoration of that. And a restoration is not, and I want to make sure people understand, it's not overthrowing anybody. It's just righting a wrong. That's what we're trying to do, right or wrong. And the first part of that, just like if you're dealing with an addict, the first part of resolving his addiction or their addiction is to come to the point and the understanding that you have an addiction, you have a problem. We have a problem, Houston. The problem is, 1860, whatever it was, people were lied to. And under those circumstances, whatever that contract is null and void. We don't want to be under that contract. We want to live under a true contract. We want to be a true free people. It's like I mentioned earlier.
We want to rectify a constitutional government is what we want to do.
Amen.
That's completely legal.
We're not under that today. And just like the example that David gave a few minutes ago, we couldn't do that today. If we had a militia like we're supposed to have, that'd be another story. But we don't. And we have a police, David, you mentioned that the militia part of the responsibility was policing, correct?
Yes.
So
By the way, you know what the term of art was of the day that we've got to restore? It was called association.
Association.
That was their movement. Remember the Articles of Association?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But that was a document that came out of the movement. That was like culminating the work of an entire movement that I estimate was between 350 and 450,000 men in this country.
Wow.
Out of a population of about 1.1 million men.
Wow.
2.3 million adult people, about 1.1 million men. And that was, so you're talking 35 or so % of the men of this country committed to it. And by the way, that's what created the Tories versus the Patriots. It was a polarization that happened because they created a movement. Nobody knows this.
Wow.
It's encouraging because if we can revitalize that association again, bring it back, bring it back to the same concept, get people to see that there's a cause, that's where this could go.
Yeah, for the longest time, I've said one of my major beefs was this Common Core that we had here in Florida. And from what I understand, they're not going to do it anymore. Thank you, God.
Rescinded, right.
But anyway, they had it, and it drove me crazy. And it was pushed upon us by the federal government. So I didn't really have any choice. If the schools wanted to continue with their funding, this is how they extort the schools to get them to do what they want. They had to do this Common Core thing. Well, that drove me crazy. I always said it should be up to the locality. The local area should be teaching the way because different people in different areas learn differently. You just don't have one way for everybody. It just doesn't work that way. And clearly it's, some places it's shown. And now that they have dropped it here in Florida, I don't know, one school dropped it and their scores went way up once they dropped it. So these are the ramifications of the decisions that a small group of people make for the entire country. What's this, like 500 of them and there's 350 million of us? It doesn't make sense.
Yep.
It doesn't make sense.
Well, I'm cautiously hopeful. I think that we still have an opportunity in front of us, as long as we can be smart. We're smart enough, competent enough, and strong enough to govern ourselves if we're just able to get ourselves into the right mindset to do it.
That's the American way, isn't it? Really? Yep. I think of John F. Kennedy, free and independent. That's how he wanted the people to be free and independent. Well, those two are parallel. In order for you to be free, you have to be independent. You have to be independently thinking, not going along with what the media is telling you to think. Look at the information in front of you and come to your own conclusions. That kind of independent in the sense that if and when the time came that you had to defend yourself, you could defend yourself. That kind of independent. We don't have a lot of that anymore. I see some of the pictures of some of the males coming up, and it's really disturbing. It really is. The feminization of the male population is something that I could do a whole bunch of shows on. Again, I laugh because it's so serious. It's so serious what's happening in our society. It's got to start somewhere. We're offering you a starting point. David, thank you. Greatly appreciate it, my friend. Wish you an awesome Sunday. I'm looking to see some of the grandkids tomorrow as well, so I'll be doing that. God bless you. Wish you wonderful, what's left of here, a wonderful day.
We'll do it again.
All right, my friend. God bless.
Take care.
All right, my friends. Thank you. Greatly appreciate you joining us tonight. Be back in a week.
Take the red pill. Take the blue pill. 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 You take the red pill, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, 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 take the red. You stay in Wonderland. You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.